Chapter 646. The third princess invited me into the palace? Chu Liwei looked up in surprise and her face was filled with shock. Yes. The third princess heard that Miss Chu turned the tide at the sect competition and is very impressed with your outstanding strength. Therefore she wants to invite you into the palace for a chat. Chani crossed her hands over her abdomen and said word by word. Even in this Chongshu pavilion, she was still as respectful, serious and well-behaved as she was in the palace. Many thoughts flashed through Chu Liue's mind. She was wondering how to get close to those people back then when Shangguanwan took the initiative to invite her into the palace. It was obvious that she didn't do this out of so-called admiration, but because of another motive. Actually, when they were in Thousand View Garden, Chu Liue had purposely aroused Shangguanwan's suspicion. Every frown and smile of hers was exactly like how she was in the past. It wasn't just to make Shangguanwan uneasy, but also to plant a seed of suspicion in her heart. She didn't expect that Shangguanwan would be unable to sit still after a month. The sect competition had just ended the day before yesterday, and Shangguanwan had sent Chani over early this morning. Her patience didn't seem to be as good as before. It's Lu Liyue's honor to receive the third princess's sincere invitation. Chu Liyue smiled faintly. Her face was filled with curiosity and excitement. She seemed to be overwhelmed by the favor, but was trying her best to control herself. May I know the time set by the third princess? If it's convenient for Miss Chu, please follow this servant back to the palace today. Today? Chu Liwei seemed to be hesitant. Yes, I don't have anything to do today, but isn't it inappropriate to enter the palace without making any preparations? Chani's gaze quickly swept across Chu Liue's face. A trace of disdain appeared in her heart, but she didn't show it on her face. He was still polite. Miss Chu, you don't have to worry about that. The third princess thinks highly of you, so she naturally won't care about this. The worry on Chu Liue's face dissipated, and she revealed a relieved and happy smile. Then I'm relieved. I'll have to trouble you. Miss Chu, please. Chu Liue had just walked out of the main entrance of the hall with Chani when Yi Ran and Chang Wanzhou, who had been waiting nervously outside, looked over. In fact, the door wasn't closed, so they could clearly hear the conversation between Chu Liue and Wang Yao from the outside. Yi Ran stepped forward and asked hesitantly, "What's the matter? Are you really going to the palace?" Chu Liue smiled. That's right, the third princess personally sent someone to invite him, which shows her sincerity. I'll be right back. Don't worry. Shangguanwan's move was so public. Even if she really wanted to do something, she wouldn't choose this time. Shangguanwan was smart enough to do that. Yi Ran quickly glanced at Chan Yi. For some reason she felt that there was something wrong with this palace maid. Even though she didn't look like there was anything wrong with her, there was something about her that made people uncomfortable and uneasy. All right. Come back soon then. Chu Liue smiled and pinched her round face. Got it. This little girl thought that she had hidden it very well, but in reality her thoughts were written all over her face. She looked at Chang Wanzhou. The two of them looked at each other. Chu Liue shook her head slightly. She knew that Chang Wanzhou wanted to go with her. However, that was obviously not appropriate. Little Zhou, remember to use the pills I gave you previously. I'll take your pulse when I get back. Chang Wanzhou pursed his lips and finally nodded. At that moment Yuchi Song suddenly walked over. Greetings, Pavilion Master Yuchi. Chani bowed respectfully. Yuchi Song smiled. Lu Yu, I'll go down the mountain with you. Chu Liue asked curiously. You're going to the palace too? Yuchi Song shook his head. No. I'm going to the Jiang residence. Chani's eyes flickered. Chu Liue immediately understood. Yuchi Song was planning to continue investigating Jiang Yuqing. Whether it was because of the Chaos Essence Gravel or the Zither Room, he seemed to have already determined that Jiang Yuqing had done something and was planning to bite him to death. I'm afraid Jiang Yuqing won't have an easy time in the future. She smiled and looked at Chani. Miss Chani, you don't mind if Master goes down the mountain with us, right? Chani said. Of course not. Pavilion Master Yuchi, Miss Chu, please. After the three of them left Qingyuan Mountain, they walked together for a while before finally parting ways. Chu Liue and Chani headed towards the palace while Yuchi Song went to the Jiang residence. Walking on the wide and clean imperial street in front of the palace gate, they looked up and saw the majestic imperial city. The dignified and solemn palace stood in front of them. The bright yellow eaves shimmered under the sunlight. The fine eaves fluttered and 9 beasts squatted on them. Noble, solemn and sacred. Chu Liuyue's expression was calm, but her heart was in turmoil. This was the place she was most familiar with. She was born here and died here. It had once shone with boundless radiance, glorious and noble. She had also been tortured and bled inch by inch. His entire life was buried here with unforgettable pain. Now, she was finally back. She would finally step through this threshold again. Chani took a few steps and realized that Chu Liyue wasn't following her. She turned around and saw her staring at the palace gate and palace in a daze. She frowned slightly as impatience flashed across her eyes. "Miss Chu, we should go in." Chu Liyue retracted his gaze. His black jade-like eyes were deep and bright. She nodded slightly and walked forward. Digression, that's all for today. Update at noon tomorrow. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 647. Chu Liyue followed Chani through the door at the side and headed straight for Huayong Palace. It was already late winter and the wind was cold. When it blew on one's face, it felt like a knife was cutting. Suddenly, Chu Liyue felt a chill between her brows. She looked up. Pure white snowflakes were falling. It was snowing. The two of them walked forward. When they reached Huayong Palace, there was already a thin layer of snow on the smooth limestone floor. Seeing Chani return, the palace servants bowed. Many people's gazes landed on Chu Liyue. They had already received news that the third princess would invite Chu Liyue over today. This person must be the one. Previously they had only heard rumors. Now that they saw her in person, they realized that those rumors were somewhat credible. At the very least, her peerlessly beautiful appearance and outstanding temperament were indeed worthy of her name. Chani walked forward. "Third princess, young Lady Chu is here." A gentle voice came from inside. "Why aren't you inviting her in?" Chani bowed to Chu Liyue. "Young Lady Chu, please." Chu Liyue nodded slightly and followed her in. Since a long time ago, Huayong Palace had been Shangguan Wan's sleeping palace. Among the many palaces in the palace, Huayong Palace was very inconspicuous. Whether it was its size, location or construction, it was at most average. Shangguan Wan's birth mother had a low status and she was not valued. When she was young she had been bullied a lot. Later on, Chu Liyue saw how pitiful she was and sympathized with her. She often spoke up for her in front of her father. Shangguan Wan's situation improved, and she moved to Huayong Palace. Although Huayong Palace could not compare to Chu Liyue's sleeping palace, it was already a great improvement for the Shangguan Wan back then. Chu Liyue thought that she would move to another place after taking power. She did not expect that she would still be here. However, Huayong Palace had been renovated. Judging from the surrounding scenery and decorations, it must have cost a lot of money. A graceful figure walked out from behind the screen. She had a pretty face and a smile on her lips. She seemed to have a hint of spring in her eyes, but there was a hint of nobility and alienation between her brows. It was Shangguan Wan. Chu Liyue glanced at her and curtsied. "Liu greets third princess." Shangguan Wan stepped forward to support him and said with a smile, "Get up quickly. Today this imperial concubine invited you here because there are some matters that this imperial concubine wishes to consult you on. There is no need to be so courteous." Although she said this, her shoulders were straight and she was still 3 steps away from Chu Liyue. She didn't have the slightest intention of asking her to be excused. Chu Liyue had seen such petty tricks too many times in the past, so he didn't care at all. After curtsying, he stood up and smiled at Shangguan Wan. "Thank you, third princess." Shangguan Wan was stunned for a moment and her movements froze for a moment. The last time they met there was still some distance between them, so she couldn't see her clearly. Now that she was standing so close, she could see her face clearly. This face. When she smiles, it really looks like... Shangguan Wan felt a trace of disgust in her heart, but she didn't show it on her face. She only smiled and sat down on the main seat. "Miss Chu, there's no need to be so polite. Please take a seat." Chan Yi walked behind Shangguan Wan to serve her. Chu Liyue didn't stand on ceremony. After thanking her, she sat down at the side. Others might be afraid of Shangguan Wan's identity, but she wasn't. Shangguan Wan was speechless when she saw her being so carefree. After pausing for a moment, she found an excuse to speak. Miss Chu, I've heard about the sect competition. Miss Chu's talent is really enviable. Chu Liyue smiled. Compared to the third princess, what is Lu Yu's talent? I heard that you were already a rank 7 warrior 2 years ago. How can Lu Yu compare? Shang Wanwan's heart felt stifled. She was indeed a rank 7 warrior 2 years ago, but ever since that incident her Yuan meridian had been destroyed, and no matter what method she used she couldn't recover. He was no different from a cripple. Chu Liyue's words were like a stab to her heart. She forced a smile and took a sip of tea to hide the coldness on her face. Chu Liyue had a faint smile on her face and her expression was sincere. That's right, there were only 3 people who knew about her physical condition, including herself. How could Chu Liyue know? My eldest sister passed away more than a year ago. I've been sad for a long time and fell seriously ill. Until now, I still can't sleep well and inevitably neglect my cultivation. I've embarrassed myself in front of Miss Chu. Chu Liyue raised her brows slightly. The third princess's eldest sister should be the former crown princess, right? It seems that you have a very deep relationship with her. Every time you mention her you feel very sad. Of course. I've been with my eldest sister since I was young. Our relationship is naturally incomparable. Shang Wanwan put down the teacup and made a soft sound as she looked at Chu Liyue. Miss Chu, please don't take it to heart. It's just that you look a little similar to my eldest sister, so every time I see you I think of her. But speaking of which, Miss Chu seems to have heard some rumors about my eldest sister? Chu Liyue's expression was normal. Actually, I've only heard a few words from young Master Jian. Shang Wanwan's heart skipped a beat. Oh, Jian Fengqi? What did he say to you? Chu Liyue smiled carelessly. When young Master Jian first met me he also said that I looked a little similar to an old friend of his. He also mentioned a few small things that happened between them. I only found out that the person he was talking about was the crown princess after I came to West Hill. Chu Liyue didn't hesitate to push the blame to Jian Fengqi. Shang Wanwan would definitely be suspicious of Jian Fengqi, but she couldn't possibly confront Jian Fengqi because of this. In the past, Jian Fengqi and Shang Wanwan's relationship wasn't bad, but now? Chu Liyue didn't know what happened between the two, but it was obvious that their relationship wasn't as good as it used to be. Jian Fengqi had always been carefree and self-centered. If he hated someone he definitely wouldn't be nice to them. It was like this for the former Shang Guanyu and it was naturally even more so for Shang Guanwan. It's not strange that he would tell you this because he always had a good relationship with my elder sister. After she passed away he also grieved for a long time. Shang Guanwan looked down and said slowly, "It's fine." Chu Liyue was stunned. Jian Fengqi grieved for her? How was that possible? Back then the two of them hated each other. Jian Fengqi would go against her whenever he had the chance and caused her a lot of trouble. She didn't expect. Forget it, let's not talk about that. I heard that you came from country Yaochen outside Heaven's Canopy, right? Chu Liyue nodded. Shang Guanwan looked at her, smiling faintly as she asked in a seemingly unintentional manner. She asked casually, I heard that you were born with a damaged Yuan meridian and only officially stepped onto the path of cultivation a year ago. I'm a little curious, how did your Yuan meridian recover? Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 648. So it was because of this. Chu Liyue sneered in her heart. That's right. Back then she had destroyed Shang Guanwan's Yuan meridian while she was at it. Even now she had yet to recover. How could she not be anxious? The power of the Tianjing Yuan meridian was extremely terrifying. The damage it caused was permanent. Not to mention Shang Guanwan, even Shang Guanyu at her peak might not be able to do it. Shang Guanwan did not dare to publicize this matter, but she definitely had a celestial physician she trusted in private. More than a year had passed but she still had not made any progress. It was obvious that she had tried everything to no avail. If she had not been forced into a corner, Shang Guanwan would not have summoned her to the palace in such a hurry. So this is what the third princess wanted to ask. Actually, this matter is a long story. Chu Liyue narrowed her eyes as if recalling something. I was indeed born with a damaged Yuan meridian. I had seen countless celestial physicians, but none of them could cure me. Until one day I was kidnapped and brought to the forest outside the imperial capital. There I accidentally met a mysterious person. I did not know who that person was, nor did I see his face. The other party only gave me a pill and a prescription. After I ate the pill, I followed the prescription to get the medicine and took it on time. Not long after, the Yuan meridian in my body returned to normal. After that, I wanted to find that mysterious person and thank him personally, but I was unable to find him. Gradually, I put this matter aside. After hearing this, Shangguan first reaction was disbelief. That's it? Chu Liwei smiled and nodded. That's it. Shangguan eyes turned cold. Could it be such a coincidence that when Chu Liwei was being plotted against, she was saved by a peak expert? That person had met her by chance, but had taken the initiative to help her recover her Yuan meridian? And after this matter, that person disappeared without a trace? Then what was that person after? Shangguan didn't believe that there was such a thing as a free lunch in this world. She did not believe a single word of Chu Liu's explanation. But this kind of thing, other than the person involved, no one else knew. If Chu Liwei was unwilling to say anything, then there was nothing he could do. Such an opportunity is hard to come by. Miss Chu has truly met a benefactor. Shangguan sized up Chu Liwei and said in an ambiguous manner. Not only did he help you recover your Yuan meridian, he even raised your Yuan meridian to the Earth class. Who knows how many people will be envious of you if news of this gets out. Chu Liwei suddenly smiled. Many people in country Yaochen have asked me about this experience. I didn't expect the third princess to be interested as well. This consort has seen a few people whose Yuan meridians were damaged by external forces and later recovered. However, this consort has never seen someone who was born with a damaged Yuan meridian and was still able to walk the path of cultivation. It was inevitable that this consort was curious and asked a few more questions. As Shangguan spoke, she sighed. To be able to do this, he must be someone with great divine abilities. If there's a chance, this consort would really like to meet that person. Chu Liwei smiled sincerely. To be honest, I want to meet that person more than anyone else and thank him in person. Unfortunately, that person comes and goes without a trace. There's no way to find him. Shangguan felt a little vexed. Only Chu Liwei knew what was going on. If she did not want to say it, who could force her? Now that she was in the limelight in Xiling, her every move was being watched. It was even more difficult to touch her. At this moment, a report suddenly came from outside the door. Third princess, Lord Zhou Mingxi is here. Shangguan was a little surprised. Why is Lord Zhou here at this time? Chani reminded her softly. Your Highness, have you forgotten that it's Lord Zhu's turn to take His Majesty's pulse today? You said last time that Lord Zhou would come and talk to you about His Majesty's condition after taking his pulse in the future. Chu Liu's hand on the armrest slightly curled up. Oh, this consort has indeed forgotten. Please ask him to wait in the side hall for a moment. This consort will come immediately. As Shangguan spoke, she looked at Chu Liwei. This consort has something to take care of. I'll have to trouble Miss Chu to wait here for a moment. If you find it boring, you can also have Chani bring you around Huayang Hall. Chu Liwei immediately said, Third princess, please. Shangguan got up and left. Soon she arrived outside the hall. Chu Liwei looked up and happened to see Zhou Mingxi's figure standing outside. Lord Zhou, why are you here so early today? This was Shangguan's voice. Zhou Mingxi bowed and said, This humble subject's jade pendant is done, so I came early to collect it. An idea suddenly popped into Chu Liu's mind. Jade pendant? The jade pendant he was talking about, could it be? That's good. This jade pendant is a symbol of status. Lord Zhou, please be careful in the future and don't lose it again. Third princess, you're right. Follow this consort. The two walked into the side hall and the voices completely disappeared. Chu Liwei was shocked. So the jade pendant that accidentally fell from Jian Fengqi's body that day was Jiang Li's. Jiang Li's said that he lost it. Then did Jian Fengqi accidentally pick it up after he lost it, or did Jian Fengqi deliberately take it from him? Thinking back to the faint ambergris on Jian Fengqi's body that day, he had clearly entered the palace. And it was very likely that he had entered father's bedchamber. But why would he do that? Chu Liwei felt like there was a cloud of fog in front of her. She couldn't see clearly. She stood up. Chani immediately asked, Miss Chu, do you want to look around? Chu Liwei turned around and smiled. Will it be too troublesome? Chani said respectfully. You're too kind, Miss Chu. Since the third princess has spoken, you don't have to worry so much. Why don't I bring you to the back garden? Chu Liwei nodded slightly. Thank you. The two then walked out of the hall. After they left, Chu Liwei glanced in the direction of the side hall, seemingly unintentionally. So that's Lord Suamingxi. I heard that he's a very powerful celestial physician. Chani seemed to have unintentionally used her body to block Chu Liue's line of sight. Her expression was polite and cold. Lord Sui is an imperial physician. Naturally, his medical skills are superb. Why is Miss Chu interested in this? Chu Liue didn't seem to notice the warning in her words. She smiled. That's not it. It's just that I've heard from my master that there are a few imperial physicians in the palace who are very powerful. That's why I admire them. I didn't expect to be fortunate enough to meet them today. Chani glanced at her, the doubts in her heart gradually dispelled. She had heard that Chu Liue was also a celestial physician, so her words sounded normal. The back garden is over there. Miss Chu, please follow me. With that, Chani walked in front and led the way. Chu Liue followed. On the other side, after Shangguan Wan and Zuomingxi entered the side hall, they went straight to the point. Lord Sua, how's father's condition? Are there any signs of him waking up? Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from LoveNet. Chapter 649. Zuomingxi shook his head. No. Shangguan Wan sighed regretfully. As expected, haven't you been giving Imperial Father medicine? Why hasn't there been any movement after such a long time? Shangguan Wan furrowed her brows, unable to figure it out. Back then, in order to create the illusion that Imperial Father was seriously ill and unconscious and bedridden, they had secretly used poison. At that time they had been thinking that after killing Shangguan Yu, they would get rid of Imperial Father as well. To the outside world, they would just say that Imperial Father had died from excessive depression because of Shangguan Yu's death. However, things had changed. They had to wait for Imperial Father to wake up again. Thus, they stopped using the poison and continued to treat him, hoping that he would wake up soon. However, this wait had lasted for more than a year. Until now there had been no movement at all. Zuomingxi looked ashamed. This humble subject is incompetent. Shangguan Wan's expression was still ugly. If not for the fact that this matter was too private and only these trusted celestial physician could use it, she would have already. Zuomingxi pondered for a moment and said hesitantly. Your Highness, actually, His Majesty's health seemed to have improved a little some time ago. At that time, whether it was his breathing or pulse, it was obvious that he was much stronger than before. Logically speaking, His Majesty should have woken up by now if he had continued to develop according to that trend. However, for some reason His Majesty's condition began to worsen. Since then, His Majesty has been in and out of consciousness, which is why His Majesty is still unconscious to this day. Shangguan Wan's face darkened. So, what are you trying to say? Zuomingxi looked conflicted. He cupped his fists and bowed. Then he carefully opened his mouth. Your Highness, this humble subject has a guess in mind, but I don't know if I should say it. What guess? Just say it. That is, His Majesty's current condition, could it be that someone has done something? Shangguan Wan suddenly looked at him. What do you mean? Zuomingxi said. Ever since I sensed that His Majesty's health had improved, this humble subject roughly knew a way to help His Majesty recover and has been following it. In the first few days it was indeed effective. But later on it inexplicably went back and forth. This humble subject has confirmed that there is no problem with this humble subject's prescription. It should not cause such a situation to occur. I suspect that there must be something fishy going on. How is this possible? This consort has always sent people to watch over Qingfeng Hall. Not even a bird can fly in. Furthermore, the three of you have been taking turns to look after my father's health. No other celestial physician has ever come in contact with him. Those who could enter and leave the Clear Wind Palace were all people she could trust, so how could such a problem have occurred? This is only a guess of this humble subject's. It may not be true. Zuomingxi immediately said, after all, that kind of medicine, it's already very difficult for His Majesty to survive until now. Shangguan Wan's face sank and she didn't say anything. When they poisoned him they only wanted to kill him. Who would have thought of saving him? She hadn't thought much of it at first, but after hearing Zuomingxi's words, she couldn't help but become suspicious. Thinking about it carefully, this might not be impossible. In the past 2 months, who has frequently entered Clear Wind Palace? Zuomingxi thought for a moment and said, Other than the three of us, it should be you and the prince consort, right? If others wanted to go, they would have to get Shangguanwan's permission. It wasn't that easy. A trace of suspicion flashed across Shangguanwan's eyes. If someone really did that, who could it be? Chu Luiyue followed Chani to the back garden of Huayang Palace. This place had clearly been renovated. Everything was incomparably exquisite and exuded a sense of luxury. There were many flowers and plants planted in the garden. It was currently the middle of winter, but the flowers were still blooming. They were colorful and beautiful. Coupled with the pure white snow, it was very beautiful. Chu Luiyue asked in surprise, "It's so cold." "It's so cold, these flowers are." The third princess ordered people to dig a ditch below and draw in the hot spring water from Jade Spring Mountain. Even in the middle of winter, the surface is still very warm. Therefore, these flowers and plants can bloom like spring in the middle of winter. Chani explained with an indifferent expression. "I see." Chu Luiyue nodded thoughtfully. Upon closer inspection, there was indeed no snow in the back garden. After the snowflakes landed on the ground, they quickly melted and seeped into the ground. She walked slowly as if attracted by these flowers and plants. However, she was thinking of another question. Shangguanwan isn't someone who likes flowers and plants. Why did she suddenly spend so much effort to dig a ditch under Huayang Palace's back garden and even draw in the water from Jade Spring Mountain? This project sounded simple, but it was actually very expensive. Even if Shangguanwan had so much money that she had nowhere to spend it, she didn't seem to spend her energy on such meaningless leisure. Unless there was a problem with the ditch below. Jiang residence. Jiang Yuqing sat at the head of the table and looked at Mu Qinghe, who was standing in front of him with her hands hanging by her side. In that case, there's really no problem with her identity? Mu Qinghe nodded. I've already sent people to investigate and confirmed it. Chu Luiyue grew up in country Yao Chen's imperial capital. Because she was born with an incomplete Yuan meridian, she was treated as a good-for-nothing and was bullied. It was only on the eve of her 14th birthday that she was saved. Her Yuan meridian was restored and she officially began to cultivate. When I arrived in country Yaochen, she had just entered the academy to cultivate. Other than me and Jian Fengqi, she shouldn't know anyone else from the Tianling dynasty. Jiang Yuqing leaned back in his chair and gently tapped the table with one hand. That's strange. Why does 100 Herbs Building value her so much? At first, I thought that they were doing it because of you. Later, I realized that it didn't seem to be the case. After she came to West Hill with Jian Fengqi, did she meet anyone? Mu Qinghe pondered for a moment and said, after she came to West Hill, she had been living in the Mu residence. At that time, Duan Ziyu accompanied her every day, so I can confirm that she didn't meet anyone suspicious. However, she moved out of the Mu residence a month ago. I heard that she lived in Pavilion Master Weiqi's former residence. I don't know what happened after that. Jiang Yuqing rubbed the space between his eyebrows and fell into deep thought. Yuqi Song is her master, so it's normal for her to do this. But didn't Yuqi Song sell most of his things? Which residence does Tu Liwa live in? Mu Qinghe hesitated for a moment. The one on 6 Cloud Street. That's one of Pavilion Master Weiqi's last 2 residences in West Hill City. Jiang Yuqing's expression froze slightly. So it's that, in the past Shangguan you liked to go to that residence very much. Previously Yuqi Song was in financial difficulties and sold a lot of things. Only these 2 residences remained untouched. One was for Shangguan Yu. The other was for his only son Wei Qilang. He suddenly sneered and said meaningfully, it seems that he really likes this Tu Liwa. He's actually willing to part with her. Knock knock. Eldest young master, Pavilion Master Weiqi of Chongshu Pavilion is here to visit. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 650. Speak of the Devil. Jiang Yuqing frowned. Why is Yuqi Song here again? He felt that something was amiss when they parted ways in the Zither room of Thousand View Garden last time. However, after waiting for a month, Yuqi Song didn't do anything. He gradually let go of this matter. He didn't expect him to come again at this time. Jiang Yuqing stood up and walked out. When he passed by Mu Qinghe, he paused. You can go back first. When you have time, go ask Chu Liwa. Mu Qinghe bowed and said, yes. Jiang Yuqing nodded slightly and left. After his figure completely disappeared, Mu Qinghe raised her head and looked in the direction Jiang Yuqing left with a cold and solemn expression. Strange. Recently Jiang Yuqing seemed to be particularly concerned about Chu Liyue's matter. Not only did he specially call him over for questioning, but he also asked him to investigate personally. This kind of thing should have been left to his subordinates to do. Now that Jiang Yuqing had instructed him to do it, it could be seen how much importance he attached to this matter. He put away the doubts in his heart and left. When Jiang Yuqing arrived at the front hall, Yuqi Song was already sitting there. A polite smile quickly appeared on his face. Pavilion Master Yuqi, what brings you here? Yuqi Song had already sensed his footsteps, but it wasn't until he was in front of him that he said, I'm here today because I have something to ask young Master Jiang. His expression was indifferent and no emotions could be seen on his face. For a moment, Jiang Yuqing's heart was pounding. He didn't know what he was planning to do this time. I've already heard about the sect meeting, but I haven't had the chance to congratulate you yet. A smile appeared on Yuqi Song's face, but his eyes were cold. Young Master Jiang is too polite. Seeing that his attitude was somewhat cold, the smile on Jiang Yuqing's face gradually faded. He walked to the opposite side and sat down. Pavilion Master Yuqi, what do you want to ask? Please ask. I will tell you everything I know. Yuqi Song was silent for a while, then stared into his eyes and asked, I wonder if young Master Jiang has ever heard of mixed yuan gravel? There was a moment of silence in the room. Jiang Yuqing said slowly, I've heard a little about it. Why is Pavilion Master Weiqi asking this? It's a long story. More than a year ago, our Chongshu Pavilion suffered a sneak attack. Our school suffered heavy casualties and we still haven't found the culprit behind the scenes. After that night, countless medicinal herbs on Qingyuan Mountain withered overnight. And from then on no more medicinal herbs could be planted. For such a long time this old man has tried to find the truth, but to no avail. It wasn't until some time ago when Wanzhou arrived and told her that there was messed yuan gravel on Qingyuan Mountain that she found her answer. According to him, the chaos yuan gravel is found in the south. This old man thought about it and felt that there was something fishy about this matter. Southern border is barren and barbaric. Who would specially go there to retrieve the chaos yuan gravel and harm our Chongshu Pavilion? This old man has always been upright and magnanimous. I've never felt the slightest bit guilty to anyone. I don't know when I've offended someone to bring about such a disaster. He paused, looked straight into Jiang Yuqing's eyes and asked word by word. If this old man remembers correctly, young Master Jiang has been to southern border before? The air gradually froze. Jiang Yuqing's expression was as usual, and the corners of his mouth even curled up into a smile. Pavilion Master Weiqi, are you suspecting that I'm the culprit behind the assassination of the Chongshu Pavilion? Yuqi Song shook his head slowly. Why would young Master Jiang think so? Wanzhou once said that the person who used the Chaos Yuan gravel would suffer a backlash after the Chaos Yuan gravel was removed. Even if he didn't die, he would be crippled. But isn't young Master Jiang fine? Although this old man is anxious, I won't suspect anyone casually. Jiang Yuqing's brows furrowed imperceptibly. Yuqi Song really didn't look like he was here to denounce him. Then why did he come here and make all these things so clear? What was his purpose? He reacted for a moment and revealed a gratified expression. Hearing Pavilion Master Weiqi's words, I'm relieved. I've always respected and admired you. How could I do such a thing? Then you came today. This old man came today to ask for young Master Jiang's help to investigate who it was. This old man remembers that when you went to southern border, you seemed to have brought a lot of people with you, right? Could it be one of them? Jiang Yuqing heaved a sigh of relief in his heart. No problem. Since you've already found some clues, then I'll help you investigate. If it's really related to my subordinates, I'll really feel extremely guilty. If this matter was left to him to investigate, he would naturally be able to find out whatever results he wanted. Yuqi Song smiled. In that case, thank you very much. Jiang Yuqing cupped his hands. Pavilion Master Weiqi, you don't have to be so polite. If you need any other help, feel free to ask. There's nothing else, but there's one thing. This old man has been quite concerned about it. Yuqi Song looked hesitant. Jiang Yuqing said, just say it. Yuqi Song pondered for a long time before slowly asking, I heard that young Master Jiang went to southern border to look for medicine to revive the Empress? I wonder, What medicine are you looking for? Jiang Yuqing's smile froze on his face. He barely maintained his calm and asked, This is all in the past. Why do you suddenly ask this? Yuqi-song looked at him. His gaze was sharp as if he could see through people's hearts. Every word was like thunder on the ground. To be honest, this old man has been thinking about what happened back then. The more I think about it, the stranger I feel. The Empress's death seems to be full of doubts. I wonder if eldest young Master Jiang ever had such a suspicion. Perhaps the Crown Princess didn't die from qi deviation during cultivation? Digression. I've been so busy updating recently that I've forgotten what the sky looks like. Today, I'm going out to eat with my sister who just finished the college entrance examination. I don't know how long I'll be back, but I'll try my best to update when I come back. Thank you for your understanding. Love mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 651. Jiang Yuqing slowly sat up straight. His face was so tense that it made his expression look rather strange. Why do you say that, Pavilion Master Yuqi? When something happened to the Empress concubine, it caused a huge commotion. Many people in the palace can testify. You said that. Did you find something? Yuqi-song paused for a moment. It's not that I found anything. It's just that I suddenly thought of many things recently and felt that something was wrong. For example, the Empress concubine had always cultivated in her own special room. Why did she suddenly go to the Imperial Ancestral Hall to try to break through? In the end she went mad and died? That place is dedicated to the memorial tablets of the Tianling dynasty's ancestors. Why did the Empress concubine go there for no reason? Jiang Yuqing lowered his eyes and said lightly, This matter. To tell you the truth, I've always had doubts in my heart. But, according to the third princess, the Empress concubine had mentioned this matter to her before she went to the Imperial Ancestral Hall. It could be seen that she was prepared. At that time the third princess also asked, but the Empress concubine didn't answer. I didn't expect that later. Until today, I'm afraid that only the Empress concubine herself knows the reason for this matter. Yuqi-song continued to ask, You're saying that the Empress concubine was prepared to go to the Imperial Ancestral Hall in advance? Jiang Yuqing nodded with a trace of sadness on his face. If I had known that those things would happen later, I would have dissuaded her at that time. Yuqi-song's eyes flickered. In that case I'm thinking too much. Jiang Yuqing glanced at him. Pavilion Master Yuqi, I know that you and the Empress concubine have a deep relationship. Her departure is a huge blow to you. But she's already gone. You should restrain your grief. If you work hard and feel depressed every day because of this, the Empress concubine's spirit in heaven will probably be sad when she finds out. Yuqi-song rubbed the space between his eyebrows with a tired expression. It's really strange. If the Empress concubine really has something important to do, she usually wouldn't be so unprepared. She didn't even tell a single person. I thought that she was forced to be taken to the Imperial Ancestral Hall. Jiang Yuqing's heart thumped twice and he forced a smile. Pavilion Master Weiqi, you're worrying too much. Her Highness the Empress concubine has a noble status and no one dares to disobey her. How could there be someone with such guts? Yes, he has a kind heart. How could anyone have such guts and such a vicious heart? Weiqi-song muttered to himself, enunciating each word clearly. It was as if he was talking to himself, but also as if he was questioning someone. Jiang Yuqing's heart beat even faster. The blood in his body seemed to have frozen and his limbs were cold. He lowered his eyes. It seems that this old man has really misunderstood. Yuqi-song stood up and let out a long sigh. Since the matter has been clarified, this old man will not waste young Master Jiang's time. I will take my leave now. Jiang Yuqing looked up. You're leaving now? That's right. The sect conference had just ended, and there were still many things to deal with in the Chongshu Pavilion. Also, I'll have to trouble young Master Jiang with the matter of Mest Yuan gravel. Jiang Yuqing braced himself and said, Don't worry. Don't worry, I'll go back and investigate this matter myself. I'll interrogate all the people who went to the southern border with me. I'll definitely give you a satisfactory answer. Only then did Weiqi-song nod his head in relief. Then he bid farewell and left. Jiang Yuqing symbolically urged him to stay and personally sent him out. When Yuqi-song's figure disappeared outside the gate of the Jiang mansion, Jiang Yuqing retracted his gaze, turned around and walked quickly back to the study with an expressionless face. Sun Qi saw that his expression was a little strange and was a little nervous. Eldest young master. Jiang Yuqing's voice was as cold as ice. Immediately gather all the people who went to Nanjiang. I want to interrogate them one by one. A hint of surprise flashed across Sun Qi's eyes, but when he saw Jiang Yuqing's expression he immediately said, yes. This subordinate will do it right away. With that, Sun Qi immediately left the study, not forgetting to carefully close the door before he left. When he was the only one left in the room, Jiang Yuqing finally couldn't suppress the anger in his heart and swept the things on the table to the ground. The people outside seemed to have been instructed by Sun Qi to stay quiet, and no one responded. Jiang Yuqing's chest rose and fell violently, his face flushed red and the veins on his forehead bulged. Only his lips were incomparably pale, looking very strange. On the surface, Yuqi Song came today to ask him to investigate the matter of Mest Yuan gravel, but in fact he clearly had other motives. He deliberately mentioned Shangguan Yu and said those words. What exactly did he want? If Yuqi Song really only had simple suspicions, he definitely wouldn't have come to the Jiang mansion and directly said these things to him. What did he know? Did he come this time to test him or to threaten him? Jiang Yuqing's heart was in a mess and his mind was in chaos. After a long time he finally calmed down. He stood there thinking for a long time with a gloomy expression and then lifted his sleeve. An ugly red scar that had already formed a scab stretched across it. He took a deep breath, took out a box of ointment from the cabinet beside him and slowly applied it. The more Yuqi Song suspected him, the calmer he had to be and the more he had to be foolproof. But for some reason the hand that was applying the ointment was trembling slightly. After Mu Qinghe left the Jiang mansion, she wanted to return to the Mu residence first. But when she thought of what Jiang Yuqing said before she left, she changed her mind and walked in the direction of Six Clouds Street. The main street of West Hill was always bustling with people coming and going, and it was very lively. He passed through the crowd and walked through the noisy street. After a few turns, the number of people around him gradually decreased and it became quiet. Unknowingly, it had started to snow. The feather-like snowflakes drifted down and landed on his head. His clothes were gradually covered with a layer of white frost, and there was a hint of bone-chilling coldness. He walked forward in silence and finally stopped in front of a house. The bluestone road, which was always clean and tidy, was covered with a layer of snow. Behind him was a string of clear footprints. He raised his head and looked at the familiar door in front of him. He had been to this place many times. But in the past year he had not been here again. He thought that he would never come here again, but he did not expect. There was a plaque hanging above the door. Chu Mansion. The handwriting was like a swimming dragon, and it was obviously Yuqi Song's handwriting. Mu Qinghe frowned slightly. It seemed that Yuqi Song doted on Chu Liyue more than he had expected. He thought that Yuqi Song would never let anyone live in this place. It had only been a year and things had changed. Mu Qinghe stared at the door for a while, then turned around and prepared to leave. But as soon as he took a step, he heard footsteps coming from inside the door. He was stunned. Chu Liyue and Chong Wanzhou shouldn't be living here now. How could there be someone inside? Just as he was thinking, the door was opened from the inside with a creak. A familiar face appeared in front of him. Vice Admiral Mu, my master invites. Digression. Today is a wasted February. Tomorrow at 12 noon. I'll take a break for 2 days before I update. Thank you for your understanding, Love mobile users. Please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 652. Yanqing. Mu Qinghe remembered that he was one of Rong Xiu's men. The master he mentioned should be Rong Xiu. But when did he come to the West Hill? Mu Qinghe was full of doubts, but she still looked very calm. She nodded slightly and walked inside. The house was not big. After bypassing the front yard and walking through the corridor, she came to a door. Yanqing pushed the door open and invited her in. Vice Admiral Mu, please. Mu Qinghe walked into the room. The room was very warm and filled with a faint smell of medicine. Rong Xiu was sitting beside a bronze and gilded stove. He was dressed in a white robe, which seemed to be the same color as the goose feather snow outside the door. Master, Vice Admiral Mu is here. Yanqing said respectfully. Rong Xiu looked up. They had not seen each other for a while. His noble and enchanting face had become more charming and outstanding. Even Mu Qinghe had to admit in her heart that Rong Xiu's charming appearance was indeed rare in the world. Rong Xiu's lips curved into a light smile. Vice Admiral Mu, please forgive me for not going out to welcome you. Mu Qinghe raised her eyebrows slowly. Why did Rong Xiu speak as if this house was his territory? Didn't Yuqi-song give this house to Chu Liyue? How have you been, Prince Li? You don't have to be so polite. As Mu Qinghe spoke, he walked over and sat down at the side. He then sized up his surroundings silently. It seemed that this house was not extensively renovated. It looked the same as before. But there were a few more things, which were obviously Rong Xiu's things. It was obvious that Rong Xiu was indeed staying here. Prince Li, weren't you in Yaochen before? When did you arrive at the West Hill? Mu Qinghe went straight to the point. Also, if I remember correctly, this house seems to have been given to Chu Liyue by the master of the Chongshu Pavilion. I wonder why Prince Li is living here now. Rong Xiu smiled faintly. It just so happened that I had some matters to attend to and was passing by this place. Thinking that Yue was here, I decided to take a look at her. She hasn't been living in the city recently, so she temporarily lent this residence to this prince. After all, they were engaged, so there was nothing wrong with doing this. I see. Mu Qinghe nodded and asked in a seemingly unintentional manner. I wonder what Prince Li is going to do to pass by the West Hill, which is thousands of miles away from Yaochen. Actually, distance wasn't the most important thing. Most importantly, the West Hill was within the heaven's canopy. If Rong Xiu wanted to enter from the outside, it would take some effort. I'm not afraid that Vice Admiral Mu will laugh at me. This prince's trip is also for this body. Mingyue Tianshan's elder found a celestial physician for this prince and said that she might be able to completely remove the root of this prince's illness. This prince is here. But when I arrived at the West Hill, I missed you and my old illness relapsed, so I decided to stay here temporarily and recuperate for a period of time. As Rong Xiu spoke, he clenched his fist and coughed twice. His face was somewhat pale. It seemed that it was indeed as he said. Mu Qinghe thought about his words twice and didn't find any problems. There were many powerful people in the heaven's canopy. Celestial physicians' level and strength were naturally higher. It was actually normal for Rong Xiu to come to the heaven's canopy to look for a doctor. Recently, Chu Liyue has been making waves in West Hill City and is very famous. Prince Li should have heard of him, right? Now, Chu Liyue's name could be said to be known by almost everyone in West Hill City. Rong Xiu's smile deepened. The corners of his eyes and the tips of his brows seemed to relax, and a touch of extreme gentleness appeared in his eyes. She has always been the best. His tone was light, but it was natural, with undisguised doting and pride. The woman he liked was naturally the most outstanding in this world. No matter what she did, she would do her best. The Wanjing competition was like this, and so was the sex meeting. Mu Qinghe paused and said, There is something that I would like to ask Prince Li. Vice Admiral Mu, please speak. Chu Liyue. Does she know anyone in West Hill? From what I heard, General Manager Yu of the 100 Herbs building seems to take good care of her. Yan Qing stood with his hands by his side and looked down. Take good care of her? How could Yu Ling not take good care of his master's wife? It was fine that he didn't know her identity before, but now that his master had personally said it, Yu Ling would naturally take good care of her. Previously, didn't Jiang Yuji suffer because she couldn't control her mouth? I have never heard her mention this. It is also her first time in West Hill. How could she know anyone here? As for that general manager Yu, I have also heard of him. But it seems that it is because you spent a lot of money in the 100 Herbs building. At this point, Rong Xiu's thin lips curled up slightly. It is said that the first time you went to the 100 Herbs building, it was with the support of Vice Admiral Mu? He smiled and his tone was light, as if he was just asking casually. But for some reason that smile didn't climb to the bottom of his eyes. There was a chill in the corners of his eyes and the tips of his brows, making one's heart turn cold. Mu Qinghe inexplicably felt that the room had become much colder. He moved his body to shake off the chill and said indifferently, Don't worry. I brought her to participate in the Wanjing competition, so it is natural for her to do these things. Moreover, not long after, she moved to this house and rarely interacted with the Mu family. But I heard that Jian Fengqi previously bet that she would win first place in the Wanjing competition and earned a lot of money. Later he even gave her a portion of the money, so she has a lot of money left. The news that Chu Liyue spent a lot of money in the 100 Herbs building had also spread like wildfire. Only this amount of money could support her expenses. Rong Xiu raised his sword-like eyebrows slightly and smiled leisurely. Is that so? In an instant the surroundings seemed to become colder. Yan Qing closed her eyes in despair. Mu Qinghe was really ruthless. Why did she have to touch the pot that didn't boil? Actually, in detail, Mu Qinghe's money was spent by Miss Lu Yu, who extorted money from her. Jian Fengqi relied on Miss Lu Yu to win the money. Logically speaking, it shouldn't be a problem for him to share the money with her. Moreover, Miss Lu Yu was spending Master's money now, but other people didn't know. In this way, how would outsiders view Master? Mu Qinghe finally realized that something was wrong. Looking at Rong Xiu's expression, she could roughly guess what was going on. Rong Xiu was born in the royal family of Yaochen and had a noble status in the imperial capital. However, in West Hill it was nothing. It was probably very difficult for him to afford Chu Liyue. Otherwise, why would he stay here instead of living outside? Thinking of this, Mu Qinghe's expression became a little strange. In this way, it seemed like Rong Xiu was living off a woman. Who would have thought that 2 months ago Chu Liyue was living off Rong Xiu? Now, in the blink of an eye, it was Chu Liyue who was living off Rong Xiu. The world was really unpredictable. Moreover, based on Chu Liyue's talent and strength, her future would be limitless. However, Rong Xiu was still dragging this sickly body. Judging from what had happened before, Chu Liyue clearly knew someone in 100 Herbs building, and it was very likely that the person's status was not low. Otherwise, 100 Herbs building wouldn't have protected her like this. However, Chu Liyue didn't seem to have told Rong Xiu about this. Mu Qinghe looked at Rong Xiu with a hint of sympathy. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 653. Speak of the Devil. Jiang Yuqing frowned. Why was Yuqi-song here again? Ever since they parted at the piano room in Qianjing Garden, he felt that something was amiss. But after waiting for a month, Yuqi-song didn't do anything. He gradually put this matter aside. He didn't expect him to come again at this time. Jiang Yuqing stood up and walked outside. When he passed by Mu Qinghe, he paused. You can go back first. I'll ask Chu Liyue when I have time. Mu Qinghe bowed and said, yes. Jiang Yuqing nodded slightly and left. After his figure disappeared completely, Mu Qinghe raised his head and looked in the direction that Jiang Yuqing left with a cold and solemn expression. Strange. Recently, Jiang Yuqing seemed to be especially concerned about Chu Liyue. Not only did he call him over for questioning, but he also asked him to investigate personally. This kind of matter could be left to the subordinates to handle. Now that Jiang Yuqing had asked him to do it, it could be seen how important this matter was to him. He put away the doubts in his heart and walked away as well. When Jiang Yuqing came to the front hall, Yuqi-song was already sitting there. A polite smile quickly appeared on his face. Yuqi Pavilion Master, what brings you here? Yuqi-song had long sensed his footsteps, but it was only when he was in front of him that he said, I'm here today because I have some things to ask young Master Jiang. His expression was indifferent and no emotions could be seen on his face. For a moment, Jiang Yuqing's heart was beating fast. He didn't know what Yuqi-song was planning to do on this trip. I've already heard about the sect meeting, but I haven't had the chance to congratulate you yet. Yuqi-song also revealed a smile on his face, but his eyes were cold. Young Master Jiang is too polite. Jiang Yuqing saw that his attitude was a little cold, and the smile on his face gradually faded. He walked to the opposite side and sat down. Yuqi Pavilion Master, if you have any questions, please ask. I will definitely tell you everything I know. Yuqi-song was silent for a while, staring at his eyes, and asked, I wonder if young Master Jiang has heard of mixed essence sand? There was a moment of silence in the room. Jiang Yuqing slowly said, I've heard of it. Why is Yuqi Pavilion Master asking this? It's a long story. More than a year ago, my Void Rush Pavilion created people to launch a sneak attack. The sect suffered heavy casualties, and the true culprit behind the scenes has yet to be found. After that night, the countless medicinal herbs on Clear Source Mountain also withered overnight. And from then on, no medicinal herbs could be planted anymore. For such a long time, this old man has also tried to find the truth, but to no avail. Until some time ago when Wanzhou came and said that my clear source mountain has mixed essence sand, did I find the answer. According to him, this mixed essence sand belongs to the southern region. This old man thought about it and felt that this matter was really fishy. The southern border is barren and barbaric. Who would specially go there and retrieve the mixed essence sand and harm my Void Rush Pavilion? This old man has always been upright and magnanimous, and has never felt the slightest bit of guilt towards anyone. Even more so, I don't know when I have offended anyone to bring about such a calamity. He paused, looking straight into Jiang Yuqing's eyes and asked word by word. If this old man remembers correctly, eldest young Master Jiang has been to the southern border before? The air gradually froze. Jiang Yuqing's expression was as usual, and even the corners of his mouth were raised in a hint of a smile. Pavilion Master Yuqi, are you suspecting that I'm the mastermind who plotted against the Clear Void Pavilion? Yuqi Song slowly shook his head. Why would eldest young Master Jiang think so? Wanzhou once said that the person who applied the mixed essence sand would suffer a backlash after the mixed essence sand was removed, and even if they didn't die they would be crippled. But isn't eldest young Master Jiang fine? Although this old man is anxious, I won't casually suspect anyone. Jiang Yuqing's brows furrowed imperceptibly. Yuqi Song's appearance indeed didn't look like he was here to denounce him. Then why did he come here and say all these things out loud? What was his purpose? He reacted for a moment and revealed a gratified expression. Hearing Pavilion Lord Yuqi say so, I'm relieved. I have always respected and admired you. How could I do such a thing? Then today you came? This old man came today to ask eldest young Master Jiang for help to find out who it was. This old man remembered that when you went to the southern border, you seemed to have brought a lot of people, right? Could it be one of them? Jiang Yuqing heaved a sigh of relief inwardly. So that's how it is. No problem. Since you've found some clues, I'll help you investigate it. If it's really related to one of my subordinates, I'm really going to feel extremely guilty. If this matter was handed over to him to investigate, he would naturally be able to find out whatever he wanted. Yuqi Song smiled. If that's the case, thank you very much. Jiang Yuqing cupped his hands. Yuqi Pavilion Lord, you're welcome. If there's anything else you need help with, just let me know. There's just one thing. This old man has been rather mindful of. Yuqi Song's face showed hesitation. Jiang Yuqing said, just say it. Yuqi Song pondered for a while and then asked slowly. I heard that when young Master Jiang went to the southern border, it was to find medicine to revive the Empress concubine? I wonder, what medicine was it that you were looking for? Jiang Yuqing's smile froze on his face. He forced himself to remain calm and asked, This is all in the past. Why do you suddenly think of asking this? Yuqi Song looked at him, his eyes sharp as if he could see through a person's heart. Every word was like a clap of thunder. To be honest, recently this old man has often thought about what happened in the past. The more I think about it, the stranger I feel. The Empress concubine's death seems to be full of suspicious points. I wonder if young Master Jiang has ever had such a suspicion that the Empress concubine might not have died from cultivation deviation? Digression. Recently I've been so busy updating that I've even forgotten what the sky is like. Today, I'm accompanying my sister out for a meal after her college entrance examination. I don't know how long I'll be back, but I'll try my best to update when I do. Thank you for your understanding. Mobile users, please browse and read. For a better reading experience, please come to the website of Self-Love. Chapter 654. It was snowing heavily and there were few pedestrians on the street. She followed the group of people all the way. In the end, she found that they had indeed arrived at the Jiang mansion. However, they came to the back door of the Jiang mansion. Chu Luiwei glanced at them from a distance. Sun Qi was standing by the door as if waiting for these people to arrive. After those people arrived, they nodded and saluted Sun Qi one by one. After checking each of them, they went in one after another. In addition to the few people Chu Luiwei had met just now, others were also arriving one after another. Chu Luiwei frowned slightly. Did Jiang Yuqing summon all the people who had followed him to Nanjiang? According to what those people said just now, they had suffered a lot in Nanjiang and Jiang Yuqing had ignored them for a year. Today he suddenly called them here. Chu Luiwei thought quickly. Right. Yuqi Song went down the mountain with them early this morning, saying that he would come to the Jiang mansion. Could it be because of this? I really don't know why the eldest young master called us here at this time. Suddenly, a lazy voice came from the corner of the street. Chu Luiyue turned his head and glanced, and saw two people walking toward the Jiang mansion one after another. The strong man who was talking was dirty all over. His left ear was cut off by something, and even his scalp was cut off, leaving only a dark red scar the size of a bowl which looked very horrible. Behind him was a thin man in shabby black clothes with half an iron mask on his face. Even so, one could still see a scar that was not covered under his mask, which looked like it was burned by fire. His whole face was probably almost destroyed, so he had to wear this mask. He lowered his head all the way, looking listless. The strong man in front suddenly turned back and laughed at himself. Your voice has been poisoned, and it's useless for me to ask you these questions. Anyway, we disabled people have no value. Our lives are at the mercy of others. An idea popped up in Chu Liyue's mind as she quickly hid herself. Do you see that? That Sun Qi is standing there. The others are also here. It must be nothing good, Walla. A red shadow flashed past quickly, leaving a clear scratch mark on his arm. Blood flowed like a river. What is it? The brawny man waved his hand, but the red shadow had already run to the other side. Damn it! I'll kill you. Nowadays even a beast dared to bully him like this. The brawny man was furious and immediately chased after him. The skinny man raised his head to take a look. Just as he was about to follow, he suddenly felt a strong force pulling him back. He was shocked. Just as he was about to struggle, he felt a chill on his neck. Dark red, boiling blood gushed out from the wound. He widened his eyes and stiffened his neck. He wanted to turn around, but someone held him down. Not long after, his legs gave out and he stopped breathing. Damn it! Little bastard, you sure run fast. Not long after, the burly man returned with an angry expression. He originally wanted to catch that thing and kill it, but he didn't expect it to be so fast. He chased it for a while and exhausted a lot of his strength, but he still couldn't catch up. In the end, it jumped and disappeared from sight. Remembering that he still had things to do here, he finally gritted his teeth and returned. If it wasn't for a year ago, I wouldn't have been bullied by a beast. He cursed softly. He saw that the skinny man was still standing in his previous position with his head lowered. He waved his hand in frustration. Let's go. We'll be punished again if we're late. The skinny man followed him to the back door of the Jiang residence. Lord Sun Qi. When he reached Sun Qi, the brawny man's ferocious aura had disappeared. Instead, it was replaced by an eager smile. We rushed over as soon as we heard the news. We're not late, right? Sun Qi's face was expressionless. He glanced at the two of them indifferently. Qi Dai Xiaomu? Qi Dai hurriedly responded and pushed the skinny man behind him. Xiaomu, what are you waiting for? Why aren't you bowing when you see Lord Sun? The skinny man didn't move. Qi Dai was stunned. Xiaomu's body wasn't good. He wanted to be blown away by the wind. His push just now didn't move him. Just as he was feeling puzzled, Xiaomu had already bowed to Sun Qi. Sun Qi knew that Xiaomu was mute, so he didn't pursue the matter. His gaze lingered on Qi Dai's arm for a moment. He frowned slightly. What's wrong with you? Qi Dai quickly said. In response to Lord Sun's question, this lowly one encountered a beast on the way here. That thing bit me. Sun Qi impatiently interrupted him. Alright, let's go in. Qi Dai didn't dare to say anything. He quickly nodded and bowed as he led Xiaomu in. After entering, someone led them to a courtyard. This courtyard was very remote and looked rather desolate. It seemed that no one had lived here for a long time. It had just been cleaned today. When Qi Dai and Xiaomu entered, there were already many people standing in the courtyard. At a glance, they were all in the same situation as them. Scarface and the others from before were also among them. Most of these people actually knew each other. However, ever since they returned from that place a year ago, they had very little contact with each other. In fact, other than the few who were familiar with each other, they hadn't seen the others. At this moment, everyone was gathered here. The atmosphere was inexplicably stifling. Occasionally, some people would whisper a few words. The entire courtyard was very quiet, heavy, and cold. Qi Dai and Xiaomu stood in the corner. Seeing this situation, Qi Dai didn't dare to say anything. He hurriedly bandaged the wound on his arm. Eldest young master had always hated blood. If he saw it, it wouldn't be good for him to vent his anger for no reason. After they entered, more people came one after another. At a rough glance, there were about 50 people. After about a quarter of an hour, Sun Qi finally came over and walked towards the innermost door. Everyone looked over at the same time and they all became nervous. Sun Qi knocked on the door. "Eldest young master, everyone is here." With a creak, the door opened. A tall figure in green robes walked out from inside. It was Zhang Yuqing. He took a few steps forward and stood on the stairs. He looked down at the people standing below with a dignified expression. Everyone hurriedly bowed. "Greetings, eldest young master." Zhang Yuqing raised his hand and asked Sun Qi, "How many people are here?" Sun Qi said respectfully, "Eldest young master, there are a total of 57 people. Originally there were more than 70 people. However, in the past year or so, people have died one after another. There were only 57 of them who were still alive." Zhang Yuqing nodded and glanced at everyone. "Do you know why I asked you to come here today?" Everyone was silent. Zhang Yuqing put one hand behind his back. His eyes were as sharp as a substance. "All of you have followed me to southern border. What I want to ask today is, did any of you come back with the Chaos Yuan gravel? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network." Chapter 655. As soon as he finished speaking, there was silence in the courtyard. Everyone looked at each other. Mestuan gravel. When they were in Nanjiang, they had passed by a place with Mestuan gravel, but they didn't stay there for long. How could they bring it back? Moreover, that thing was quite poisonous and extremely difficult to deal with. How could they have anything to do with it? At that time it would be too late to save their lives. Seeing that no one spoke, Zhang Yuqing slowly said, "I recently heard that Mestuan gravel appeared in Xiling City. And this thing, only Nanjiang has it. I don't know about others and I can't care about it. But you were all brought to Nanjiang by me. If it was really done by one of you, it's best to admit it now. Otherwise, if I find out, it won't be so easy." Still no one responded. They really didn't do it, so how could they admit it? Zhang Yuqing asked with a cold and solemn expression, "It seems that you want me to interrogate you one by one?" After waiting for a while, there was still dead silence. Zhang Yuqing pointed to a person standing in front of him. "Let's start with you." The man who was pointed at was Scarface from before. His face was blank and there was a hint of panic. What did eldest young master mean? Zhang Yuqing had already turned around and entered the house. Sun Qi raised his chin at Scarface. "What are you waiting for? Hurry up and go in." Scarface came back to his senses and hurriedly followed Zhang Yuqing into the house. Sun Qi closed the door, looked at everyone again and said coldly, "It's because one of you brought a lot of trouble to eldest young master." Now that eldest young master was personally investigating the matter, everyone knew who had done it. If you don't say it now, you won't have the chance later. With that, he stood at the door and waited respectfully. Many people secretly exchanged glances with different expressions. "I didn't expect it to be because of this." In the corner, Qi Dai lowered his voice and said to Xiamu, "It seems like the situation is quite serious. Otherwise, first young master would not have gathered all of us here. Strange, we did not stay in that place for too long and most of us were injured. Who would have the ability to take away the Chaos Yuan gravel? Moreover, that thing was useless for one's cultivation. Even if one wanted to use it as a poison, there were so many poisons in this world. Why must one use this? Wouldn't it be a thankless task if he were to accidentally lose himself as well?" His voice was very soft and only Xiamu, who was standing nearby, could hear him clearly. After Qi Dai finished speaking, he saw that Xiamu didn't move. He couldn't help but nudge him with his elbow. "Don't you think so?" Xiamu nodded. "There's no point in telling you this." Qi Dai was a little exasperated. Ever since Xiamu became mute, it was as if he had become a different person. His entire body was wooden. However, he couldn't be blamed for this. In the past, Xiamu's talent and strength were not bad. Back in the southern border, he had even saved Qi Dai's life. Unfortunately, it ended up like this. It was also because of this that Qi Dai had taken good care of Xiamu in the past year. "Forget it. We didn't do it anyway. Eldest young master can investigate as much as he wants." However, Xiamu looked at the tightly shut door. The black eyes under the iron mask flickered slightly. Soon Scarface walked out of the room. Everyone hurriedly looked over and saw that his expression was normal. It seemed that nothing had happened. They couldn't help but heave a sigh of relief. Eldest young master was decisive and thoughtful. Those who fell into his hands never had a good ending. Sun Qi raised his hand. You go over there and wait first. Scarface walked to the other side. Next you. Sun Qi pointed to the second person. The second person hurriedly walked in. Everyone looked at him, then at Scarface. Unfortunately, Scarface was expressionless. He just stood at the side with his hands by his side. No one could see anything and could only continue to wait. Time seemed to pass exceptionally slowly while they waited. The snow was getting heavier and heavier. Many people were covered in snow, but no one dared to move casually. Basically, they all stood in their positions and waited quietly. After a while, the second person came out. He also followed Sun Qi's instructions and walked to Scarface's side. Then the third person came out. Unknowingly, more than half of the people had been investigated. Seeing the person in front of him being called away, Qi Dai couldn't help but feel nervous. The next one should be him or Xiamu. Although they didn't do anything, they still felt a little apprehensive at the thought of facing eldest young master alone. He subconsciously glanced at Xiamu, but he saw that he had been standing there without moving since the beginning, and he didn't seem very nervous. Soon the person who went in also walked out. Until now, the 30 people who went in and came out basically didn't show any abnormalities. Next, Qi Dai. Sun Qi shouted. Qi Dai took a deep breath and walked over. After a while, someone beside him muttered in a low voice. It seems that nothing happened. However, just as he said that, Qi Dai walked out of the room. Everyone looked over at the same time, but their faces were filled with astonishment. Qi Dai's face was pale and his forehead was covered in sweat. He looked like he had suffered a huge blow. Jiang Yuqing's cold voice came from inside the room. This person will be interrogated later. Sun Qi immediately said, yes. As he said that, he ordered Qi Dai to stand alone on the other side and sent 2 guards to guard him. When everyone saw this scene, they were all confused and nervous. Could it be? Qi Dai did it. Qi Dai stood there trembling slightly and kept muttering, it's not me. It's really not me. It's really not me. He clearly didn't do anything, so why did eldest young master say that there was something wrong with him? He looked at his arm. The wound from before was no longer bleeding, and it shouldn't take long for it to recover. But eldest young master's expression suddenly changed because he looked at his arm a little longer. What's going on? Whispers could be heard from the crowd. The few people standing beside Xiamu looked at him in unison and asked softly, what's wrong? Xiamu, could it be that the matter of the Mestuan gravel has something to do with Qi Dai? You're the most familiar with him. You should know whether he did it or not, right? I think Qi Dai is in trouble this time. You're so close to him. Be careful not to be implicated. Sun Qi's expression was cold as he continued, next Xiamu. Xiamu nodded at the few of them and walked over to the other side. When he reached the door, Qi Dai immediately said, Xiamu. Xiamu, you must help me prove that I'm innocent. Sun Qi gave Qi Dai a warning look. He shivered and didn't dare to say another word. Xiamu paused and walked in. Jiang Yuqing was sitting at the head of the table. Seeing Xiamu walk in, he said, take off the mask. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 656. In another courtyard of the Jiang residence, Jiang Yuji was applying ointment in her room out of boredom. She sat in front of the bronze mirror and carefully examined her face. After some time, the scars on her face had basically disappeared. With the Bingji ointment, there were no scars left on her face. This made her heave a sigh of relief and her mood improved a lot. Where's brother? She asked as she picked out an exquisite dangling hairpin from the jewelry box. The maidservant behind her immediately said, eldest young master seems to have something important to do today. He sent people to seal off Wutong Garden early in the morning. Wutong Garden? No one has ever lived there. It's very desolate and remote. What's brother doing there? This servant doesn't know. Jiang Yuji looked at herself in the mirror and nodded in satisfaction. She got up and walked outside. I'm going to see brother. The maidservant was shocked. Fourth young miss, you're going now? Yes. I've been in the residence for too long recently. I didn't even go to the sect meeting. After being locked up for so many days, brother should be willing to let me out. She was really bored to death in the residence. Moreover, brother said that he wanted to investigate 100 Herbs building in Chuluiwe, but there hadn't been any progress. She wanted to enter the palace and have a chat with the third princess. Ignoring the maidservant's attempts to stop her, she walked out of the door. The maidservant had no choice but to quickly follow. She wanted to persuade her a little more, but when she thought about how the fourth young Mrs. Temper had worsened and how she had already punished many people who served her, the maidservant closed her mouth. After walking for a short distance, Jiang Yuji saw a manservant running over in a hurry. When he saw Jiang Yuji, the manservant quickly bowed. "Greetings, fourth young miss." Jiang Yuji looked at his flustered appearance and was slightly dissatisfied. "What happened? Why are you so flustered?" The manservant immediately said, "Fourth young miss, Her Highness the third princess is here." Jiang Yuji was shocked. "Really? How would I dare to lie about such a thing? The third princess is already in the guest hall. Master and Madam aren't in the residence today, and the third princess said that she was here to see eldest young master. Isn't this lowly one rushing over to invite him over?" Jiang Yuji thought to herself, what a coincidence. She was just about to enter the palace to talk to the third princess when she came. Then go and invite big brother over first. How could there be no one to receive the third princess when she came to the residence? I'll make a trip there myself. The servant knew that the fourth miss and the third princess had always been on good terms, so there seemed to be no problem. Then I'll have to ask fourth young miss to take care of everything. I will go and invite the eldest young master. After saying that, he ran away like a wisp of smoke. Jiang Yuji walked toward the guest hall. Jiang Mansion, guest hall. As soon as Jiang Yuji arrived, she saw Sheng Wanwan sitting inside. An affectionate smile appeared on her face as she stepped forward. "Third princess, why didn't you inform me beforehand that you were coming?" Sheng Wanwan turned her head and saw that it was Jiang Yuji and not Jiang Yuqing. A trace of disappointment flashed through her eyes. However, this expression quickly dissipated. She smiled. This consort also came up with this idea on the spur of the moment. "Third princess, you came at the right time. I have something to tell you." As Jiang Yuji spoke, she walked to Sheng Wanwan's side. Sheng Wanwan smiled faintly. "What is it?" However, Jiang Yuji looked around and dismissed her attendants. Seeing her put on such a show, Sheng Wanwan also took it more seriously. After confirming that no one was eavesdropping, Jiang Yuji lowered her voice and said, "Third princess, have you seen that Chu Liwa?" Sheng Wanwan was stunned for a moment before nodding. "Of course I have. In fact, she had just seen him today." Jiang Yuji tightened her sleeves. Don't you think that Chu Liwa looks a lot like someone?" The smile on Sheng Wanwan's face instantly faded. "Yuji, what are you trying to say?" In a room in Wutong Garden. Xiamu hesitated for a moment and didn't move. Jiang Yuqing frowned slightly. His eyelids twitched slightly as he glanced at the thin man standing in front of him. There was a strong pressure in his eyes as well as a faint hint of warning. It was as if he wouldn't let anyone off if they didn't do as he said. Xiamu reached out and slowly took off the iron mask on his face. A severely burned face appeared in front of Jiang Yuqing. Terrifying scars stretched across his face, and his entire face seemed to be somewhat distorted. It was daunting. Jiang Yuqing's frown deepened. He remembered that this Xiamu had been burned before. With this appearance, it was no wonder that he had been wearing a mask. He waved his hand in disgust. "Put it on." Xiamu didn't seem to see his disdain and obediently put on the mask again. His movements were slow and stiff, and his aura was dispirited. Only his pair of black jade-like eyes flickered with a faint light, making people feel that he was still alive. Jiang Yuqing asked. "Just now, Chi-Dai said that the injury on his arm was caused by a demonic beast when he came here today. Is that true?" Xiamu nodded. Jiang Yuqing glanced at him. "You said that your voice was mute because of the poison, right?" Xiamu nodded again. He lowered his head slightly and Jiang Yuqing couldn't see the expression in his eyes. "I don't remember clearly. What poison did you use to make you mute?" As Jiang Yuqing spoke, his voice became inexplicably sterner. "Was it the Mestuan gravel?" He immediately shook his head and waved his hand quickly, indicating that it wasn't because of the messed yuan gravel. Jiang Yuqing said calmly, "Why are you so nervous? Why are you so nervous? This young master is just casually asking." He knew very well that the messed yuan gravel couldn't make people mute. However, that wasn't what he was looking at. He asked 2 more questions and Xiamu answered them by nodding and shaking his head. Jiang Yuqing didn't find it interesting to ask, so he leaned back lazily in the chair. "You can leave." Xiamu bowed and respectfully turned to leave. However, just as he walked to the door, Jiang Yuqing suddenly remembered something. "Wait." Xiamu stood still and looked back at him. Jiang Yuqing stared at Xiamu intently. Every word he said was like an invisible thunderbolt. "I remember that you were still at the early stage of the 6th stage a year ago. How did you reach the peak of the 4th stage now?" The air in the room froze inch by inch. Digression. Updated at noon tomorrow. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 657. Knock knock. Knocking sounds suddenly came from the door, breaking the silence in the room. "Eldest young master, the 3rd princess is here," Sun Qi said respectfully. Jiang Yuqing's frown deepened. "Shengguanwan? Why did she come to the residence all of a sudden?" He stood up and swept his cold gaze over Xiamu. "You wait here first." Xiamu bowed his body and lowered his head, seemingly rather nervous. Jiang Yuqing opened the door and looked at Sun Qi. "Did the 3rd princess come alone? Where is she now?" Sun Qi hurriedly said, "Eldest young master, the 3rd princess came in a carriage with Chani. She's already sitting in the guest hall. Master and madam aren't in the residence, so now 4th miss is taking care of her. The servant is outside the courtyard waiting for you." "Jiang Yuji? Didn't I tell her to stay in her residence? Why did she go to the guest hall?" Jiang Yuqing instantly recalled what Jiang Yuji had said previously, and uneasiness grew in his heart. He didn't know if Jiang Yuji had improved during this period of time. If she still had the same thoughts as before, then it wouldn't be good. After thinking for a moment, he immediately decided to go personally. Right now he was really worried about Jiang Yuji. Moreover, the 3rd princess came suddenly. Perhaps there was something important. "I'll go now." As Jiang Yuqing spoke, he pointed at Scarface and the others who had come out and stood together. "You can go back now. Remember, don't reveal a single word about today's matter. If I find out that there are any rumors about today, you know the consequences." "Yes." Scarface and the others responded in unison. They rejoiced in their hearts and left one after another. As for those who hadn't been investigated, they would undoubtedly continue to wait in this courtyard. They couldn't help but look enviously at Scarface and the others who were leaving. Jiang Yuqing glanced at Qi and said coldly to Sun Qi, "This one and the one in the room have to be specially watched." Sun Qi was slightly shocked. Didn't they already choose Qi? Yes. Seeing Jiang Yuqing's cold and solemn expression, he immediately responded and sent 2 guards in to guard Xiamu closely. After explaining all this, Jiang Yuqing left. After he left, most of the people in the courtyard secretly heaved a sigh of relief. However, Qi was even more flustered. Why was Xiamu also detained? Judging from eldest young master's attitude just now, his attitude towards Xiamu seemed to be very. Could it really be Xiamu who did this? No, that's not right. When they were in the southern border, there were many dangers and they had been forced to split up. Even the eldest young master had lost contact with them for an entire day. But he and Shimu had always been together. Regardless of whether it was him or Shimu, both of them could testify for each other's innocence. But why did eldest young master seem so certain that they were the culprits? Just now, eldest young master had only asked him a few questions, but his expression suddenly changed and he was certain that he was the one who did it. He didn't even have the chance to explain before he was chased out and watched by these people. He didn't even need to think to know what was waiting for him. Could it be that Xiamu was facing the same situation as him? Qi looked into the room anxiously. Unfortunately, other than the 2 guards in charge of guarding the room, he couldn't see Xiamu at all. "Behave yourself." The guard next to him kicked the back of his knee, almost causing him to kneel on the ground. Qi was terrified and didn't dare to look around casually. He could only retract his gaze and feel suffocated. Could it be that this time he was really going to die here? Chi was worried about himself and Xiaomu and he felt uneasy. However, Xiaomu, who was in the room, seemed to be much calmer. After Jiang Yuqing left, 2 guards walked in and stood beside him with a murderous aura. They looked like they would immediately kill him if he made any strange movements. However, half of Xiaomu's face under the mask was still very blank, as if he didn't realize how dangerous the situation was. He stood and waited for a while before walking to the side. Playing. What are you doing? The 2 guards drew their swords in unison. Xiaomu didn't seem to notice anything. He continued forward and walked to a good pearwood chair. He sat down. The 2 guards were dumbfounded. Was he tired of standing and wanted to sit down? Get up. Who do you think you are? How dare you sit here casually? One of the guards waved his sword as if he would cut off Xiaomu's neck in the next second. However, Xiaomu only raised his head and glanced at the 2 of them indifferently. His ink-black eyes were as calm as water, without any ripples. However, when he looked at them quietly, it was as if he had materialized and carried an invisible pressure. The guard's sword shook and he was at a loss for words for a moment. Forget it, what's the point of arguing with a mute? When eldest young master comes back, he'll be in for it. The other guard didn't want to cause any more trouble, so he tried to persuade him. When eldest young master left, he had instructed him to keep a close eye on this person. This was someone that eldest young master wanted. How would they dare to kill this Xiaomu? Even if they injured him, it wouldn't be good. Anyway, eldest young master would be back soon. As long as this Xiaomu didn't cause any trouble, they didn't have to force him too much. Let's see how long you can be arrogant for. The guard who raised his sword also understood the pros and cons in his heart, so he went with the flow. Xiaomu looked at the 2 of them indifferently and leaned against the chair with half his face as if he was unmoved. Hence, Xiaomu sat while the 2 of them stood. Xiaomu was idle while the 2 of them were vigilant. Xiaomu was clearly the one who was being guarded and in danger, but he was calmer and more carefree than the 2 guards in charge of guarding him. It was as if it had nothing to do with this matter. Xiaomu leaned against the chair and thought lazily. Shangguanwan was here and Jiang Yuqing would only be back after a long time. Of course, he had to sit down and rest. In the guest hall. In any case, I feel that Tu Liwei is very annoying. She's only been in West Hill for a few days and she's already so arrogant. I wonder how arrogant she'll be in the future. As Jiang Yuji spoke, a hint of resentment appeared on her face. Now that she dares to bully the Jiang family's 4th young mistress, she might even be disrespectful to you in the future. 3rd princess. Shangguanwan listened and said with an indifferent expression, I know that she looks a little similar to my eldest sister, but there are people who look alike in this world. Their appearance is given by their parents, so who can they blame? Moreover, from what I see, this Chu Liwei is actually not bad. Usually you hate her so much because you feel that she stole something from you, right? After saying so much, Jiang Yuji only had one meaning. She wanted to borrow Shangguanwan's hand to deal with Chu Liwei. Although she didn't like Chu Liwei very much, she didn't like being used as a tool even more. Jiang Yuji hesitated for a moment. Of course not. Actually, there's something that I haven't told your highness. She lowered her voice. My brother's study has actually always been. A voice suddenly sounded, interrupting Jiang Yuji's words. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 658. The 2 of them looked up at the same time. It was Jiang Yuqing. He walked over with a faint smile on his face. I was just about to enter the palace to see you and discuss the wedding matters when you came. Shangguanwan's heart warmed when she heard him mention this, and her expression also improved. As Jiang Yuqing spoke, he sat down beside the 2 of them and asked in a seemingly casual manner. Why didn't you say anything in advance? You came, but there was no one in the residence to entertain you. How negligent. It's fine. This consort only brought Chani here on a whim. Besides, isn't Yuji accompanying this consort? Shangguanwan smiled. Jiang Yuqing glanced at Jiang Yuji. What were the 2 of you talking about just now? His gaze slowly swept over Jiang Yuji's body, causing her to immediately feel guilty. She lowered her head and muttered, nothing. He didn't say much. She said that she hasn't left the residence during this period of time and doesn't know what interesting things have happened outside, so she begged this consort to tell her. Shang Guanwan calmly continued the conversation and glared at Jiang Yuqing. No matter what, she's still your younger sister. How can you just lock her up in the residence like this? Look at how aggrieved she has become. Why don't you just let her go this time? Jiang Yuji glanced at her gratefully. This. Jiang Yuqing glanced at the two of them and laughed. Since Wan personally pleaded for leniency, I naturally have no reason to refuse. Yuji, from today onwards your confinement is lifted. Jiang Yuji looked up in surprise. However, you have to remember what I told you before. If you don't learn your lesson, no one will be able to help you. I got it. Thank you, big brother. Thank you, third princess. Jiang Yuji had long been bored to death. She had come out today to ask her brother for this matter. She didn't expect that it would be done before she even asked. How could she not be happy? For a moment she almost regarded Shang Guanwan as her great benefactor. Jiang Yuqing smiled and handed over a cosmos ring. I know you've been wanting to go out for a long time. Take it, you can buy whatever you want today. But you have to bring Uncle Fu with you. Uncle Fu was an old man in the Jiang residence and was also a peak rank 7 martial artist. With him around he could protect Jiang Yuji. Jiang Yuqing shrieked in joy and quickly snatched the cosmos ring, as if she was afraid that Jiang Yuqing would regret it. I know. Thank you, brother. Before he could finish his words, he had already run out. Let's go. When Jiang Yuji disappeared from his sight, Jiang Yuqing breathed a sigh of relief. He turned to look at Shang Guanwan. Why are you here today? He didn't believe that Shang Guanwan was really suddenly interested. Shang Guanwan stared at him for a while before she selectively repeated what Zhou Mingxi had said today. The more she said, the colder Jiang Yuqing's face became. That's about it. But now Master Zhou only has a trace of suspicion and doesn't have any evidence. After thinking about it, I feel that I still need to discuss this matter with you. As Shang Guanwan spoke, she looked at Jiang Yuqing's face. It seemed that he had nothing to do with this matter. In fact, she didn't want to suspect Jiang Yuqing in her heart, but she had no choice but to test him. But now it seemed that she had thought too much. But if it had nothing to do with him, who could it be? Jiang Yuqing frowned. There are only a few people who go in and out of Qingfeng Palace every day. Could it be that someone really did something to make His Majesty? He stood up restlessly and paced back and forth, repeatedly thinking about who might have the opportunity to do it. In fact, he had long felt that something was wrong, but he didn't know what the problem was. Now, according to Zhou Mingxi's words, perhaps he really should investigate it carefully. What about the other two celestial physicians? What did they say? Shang Guanwan said helplessly. I haven't asked them yet. Master Zhou is on duty today, and the other two didn't enter the palace at all. Jiang Yuqing said in a deep voice. Since Master Zhou can sense this problem, the other two should be able to as well. But they haven't done anything yet, nor have they expressed their opinions. You mean it's possible that the two of them did it? Shang Guanwan froze for a moment and immediately denied it. Impossible, those two were carefully selected by me. They have been with me for many years and it's impossible for them to betray. How can there be no betrayal in this world? Jiang Yuqing said with a sullen face. Shang Guanwan's expression changed slightly as if she was hit by something. The atmosphere between the two froze for a moment before Shang Guanwan said. Then, we have to investigate this matter later. Jiang Yuqing nodded. This is a serious matter, so we have to be careful. Shang Guanwan thought of something and didn't reply. Jiang Yuqing calculated the time in his heart. I still have to go back and deal with the remaining half. Yuqing, many officials in the court have been urging us to set the wedding date recently. What do you think? Shang Guanwan recovered her senses and said something that stunned Jiang Yuqing. What? Why did they suddenly start urging us? Didn't we say that it's only going to be in these few months? They're urging us to set a specific date. Even though we already have a marriage agreement, the wedding date hasn't been set yet. They're naturally anxious. Besides, they didn't suddenly urge us. It's been a while. It's just that, you didn't care about it. Shang Guanwan's voice was filled with dissatisfaction. Every time they talked about the wedding date, Jiang Yuqing would always reject it and say, wait a little longer. At the start he said that it was because Shang Guanyu died, so the two of them couldn't get together too quickly. But now he's been dead for almost 2 years and it's almost time for the mourning period. Now I'm the true ruler of the Tianling dynasty. Do I still have to care about a dead person's face whether I get married or not? Besides, I've been engaged to Jiang Yuqing for more than half a year, but they haven't even set a wedding date. Even I feel uncomfortable every time I think about it. Jiang Yuqing immediately went forward, held her hand and patiently persuaded her. It's not that I don't care. I clearly care too much, so I'm very careful. We've just stabilized our foundation. Most importantly, His Majesty hasn't woken up. Do we not get married if father doesn't wake up? Sheng Guanwan said angrily. Jiang Yuqing was embarrassed. The rule of the Tianling dynasty has always been that only those who get married can truly ascend to the throne. The day of the wedding is also the day I ascend to the throne. Although I hold great power now, I'm just the third princess after all. As long as I don't get married, I won't be legitimate. Sheng Guanwan stared at Jiang Yuqing and said word by word, I don't intend to wait any longer. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from AI. Net. Chapter 659. It was the same for Sheng Guanyu back then. The day of her and Jiang Yuqing's wedding was actually her coronation ceremony. However, the person who came later died, so it naturally couldn't continue. Now that it was finally her turn, how could she delay it again and again? She couldn't be at ease as long as she didn't sit on that throne. Jiang Yuqing saw her determined expression, as if she had really made up her mind and couldn't help but have a headache. But, have you forgotten the most important thing? If you really want to take the throne legitimately, then you have to pick up the Tianling scepter personally. But now your body. Sheng Guanwan's expression changed slightly and she gritted her teeth. Of course she remembered this. Every emperor of the Tianling dynasty had to pick up the Tianling scepter in front of the courtiers when they ascended the throne. That was a symbol of identity and status. It also represented the true supreme power of the Tianling dynasty. However, the Tianling scepter weighed thousands of kilograms, and only a martial artist with the strength of level 8 or above could pick it up. The current Sheng Guanwan's Yuan meridian was crippled, so she couldn't do it at all. She could use some methods to hide the fact that she was already a cripple. However, the Tianling scepter definitely couldn't be concealed. Have you ever thought about how the courtiers will look at you if you can't pick up the Tianling scepter successfully? They will definitely think that you don't have the ability and qualifications to inherit the throne. The Tianling scepter was almost a godly existence in the entire Tianling dynasty. Countless people looked up to it and were full of admiration. That was everyone's belief. Only those who were recognized by the Tianling scepter could become the true emperor. If Sheng Guanwan failed, she probably wouldn't be able to get rid of this shadow for the rest of her life. Sheng Guanwan bit her lip. Previously, they had been waiting for her father to wake up before carrying out this series of plans. But now no one knew how long they would have to wait. However, Sheng Guanwan couldn't wait for the throne. She said, then let's think of a way to recover the Yuan meridian first. Anyway, the Wanjing competition has already ended. Jiang Yuqing looked at her in shock, then immediately frowned and said, no. It's still early. If we act now, it will definitely arouse suspicion. So what if I suspect you? Didn't many people suspect Sheng Guanyu's death back then? Wasn't he still fine in the end? Sheng Guanwan sneered. As long as you have real power, all doubts will disappear. Jiang Yuqing glanced at her coldly. Do you know how much effort I put in to quell those doubts? Sheng Guanwan rolled her eyes, got up and walked to Jiang Yuqing. The arrogant and despotic look on her face had been replaced by a sweet and charming smile. She leaned into his embrace, hugged his waist with both hands and said coquettishly, of course one knows. Yuqing has always treated me the best, hasn't he? She didn't say this consort. In any case, the current situation is like this. It can't be changed no matter what. Perhaps there is only one way for me to recover my Yuan meridian. Even if I don't do it now, I will definitely do it in the future. As long as he was careful, there would be no problem. Her hand slowly brushed against his arm, and there was a tinge of sadness on her face. Both of us were injured back then. You had already fully recovered more than a year ago, but Jiang Yuqing closed his eyes and hid the anger in them. He hated it the most when Sheng Guanwan mentioned this, always reminding him over and over again that this arm wasn't his. Even though he didn't feel anything strange now, he still felt uncomfortable in his heart. If he didn't agree to Sheng Guanwan's request today, she definitely wouldn't let it go. After thinking for a long time, he finally nodded. Shang Wanwan looked up at him happily. You agreed? Really? Jiang Yuqing's lips curled up into a smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. Of course. I'll personally arrange this matter. You just have to focus on investigating the problem on His Majesty's side. Yes. I knew that you wouldn't not care about me, Yuqing. As Shang Wanwan spoke, she hugged him and asked, Oh right. Since we've already decided on this, why don't we set the wedding date? Jiang Yuqing wanted to reject her, but he swallowed his words when he saw her expression. After pausing for a moment, he said, How about after the 6th of August? Shang Wanwan was a little disappointed. Doesn't that mean there's still half a year? It's too long. Why don't we set it on the 6th of June? Everything should be ready by then. Even though it was a question, her tone was unquestionable. Jiang Yuqing nodded. Then the 6th of June it is. Then Jiang Yuqing chatted with Shang Wanwan for a while and settled some matters. Only then did Shang Wanwan leave in satisfaction. She had already thought of how to deal with those old fellows the next day. After suddenly resolving 2 of her worries, she was elated and didn't notice the hint of impatience in Jiang Yuqing's eyes. After she left, Jiang Yuqing stood alone in the guest hall for a while, adjusted his expression and headed toward Wutong Garden. Since these things have already started to be prepared, I have to hurry up on my side. Especially, I can't let Yuqi Song have any evidence against me. I have to settle this problem as soon as possible. The crowd in Wutong Garden kept waiting. The heavy snow didn't stop, and the accumulated snow had already reached their calves. It was bone-chilling. But the courtyard was extremely quiet, and there wasn't even a single complaint. They didn't even dare to show their dissatisfaction. Sun Qi stood on the stairs and swept his gaze across the crowd before looking into the room. Xiamu was sitting inside, looking rather relaxed and carefree. Sun Qi was fuming with anger. This Xiamu is really crazy. Eldest young master's attitude when he left clearly said that there's something wrong with this Xiamu. However, he didn't seem to notice it at all. Not only was he not worried about his situation at all, he even sat down calmly to rest as if this was his own home. In the past he didn't think that Xiamu would be so ungrateful. Then he looked at Qide. After coming out of the room he stayed there obediently. He heard that the 2 of them had a good relationship. Why was there such a huge difference? If it weren't for the fact that eldest young master might come back and continue interrogating him and couldn't do anything to Xiamu, he would have chased him out of the room and ordered him to kneel outside for a day and night. Eldest young master. Suddenly a servant's voice came from outside. Everyone in the courtyard, including Sun Qi, looked over at the same time. Jiang Yuqing walked in. There was a thick layer of snow on the ground. He walked on it, but he didn't leave any footprints. Everyone's hearts trembled as they bowed. Greetings, eldest young master. Jiang Yuqing ignored them and walked straight into the room with a cold expression. As soon as he entered, he saw 2 guards standing there vigilantly. Beside them, a person was sitting on a chair. It was Xiamu. Jiang Yuqing's anger instantly rose. How dare you? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 660. The 2 guards immediately knelt down. On the other hand, Xiamu slowly stood up and bowed, as if he didn't realize how much he had gone overboard. Jiang Yuqing was so angry that the veins on his forehead were throbbing. He had never seen such an impudent and bold person in the Jiang residence. Xiamu. How dare you? Xiamu raised his head and glanced at him. His eyes seemed to be shrouded in a layer of mist and he couldn't see clearly. He seemed to be very confused. Didn't he ask him to wait here? He was waiting here and didn't do anything. Jiang Yuqing closed his eyes tightly. If it weren't for the fact that there were so many people around, he would have already kicked them. Both of you, get lost. He shouted angrily at the 2 guards. Useless. The 2 of them hurriedly responded and left the room. However, just as they reached the door, they heard Jiang Yuqing continue. Kneel outside. Slap yourself 50 times. The 2 guards looked at each other and complained in their hearts. This was clearly Xiamu's fault. Why did it become them being punished in the end? But at this moment, Jiang Yuqing was in a fit of anger. Who dared to refute him? The 2 of them could only comply obediently. They walked into the courtyard, knelt in the snow with a plop and began to slap themselves. When everyone saw this, they looked at each other in confusion. What happened? Weren't the two of them guarding Xiamu in the room earlier? How did they provoke eldest young master? I didn't hear any movements in the room just now. The loud and clear sound of slapping echoed in the quiet courtyard, and it was even clearer. Many people looked at Sun Qi. Sun Qi knew the reason, but looking at the two guards he was also displeased. They were clearly carrying sabers and were in charge of guarding, but they were suppressed by Xiamu. I really don't know what they're doing. They deserve to be punished by eldest young master. He glanced into the room. At this moment the door was tightly shut and he couldn't see anything. However, eldest young master was already back. Wouldn't it be easy to deal with Xiamu? In the room, Jiang Yuqing stared at Xiamu and his voice was as cold as ice. You're quite carefree, huh? What do you take this place for? Is this your home? Xiamu lowered his head and his shoulders drooped. He looked a little listless. Hearing this question, he immediately shook his head. Oh, this place is too disgusting. Forget about being the head of the house. Then you still dare to do this? Jiang Yuqing raised his hand and was about to hit Xiamu, but when he saw the half-mask on his face he stopped. Now was not the time to get angry. More importantly, they had to solve the problem. Jiang Yuqing took a deep breath, suppressed the anger in his heart and narrowed his eyes dangerously. I'll hold you responsible for this later. You haven't answered what I asked you just now. Speak. What the hell is going on? His last words were like a clap of thunder, full of pressure. Xiamu's body shuddered as if he was shocked by this voice. Then he raised his hands and gestured. Only then did Jiang Yuqing remember that he couldn't speak. He walked to the side of the table and threw a stack of paper, a brush and an inkstone at Xiamu. The inkstone even hit Xiamu's shoulder. His body trembled slightly. Right. Jiang Yuqing said angrily. Xiamu hesitated for a moment before slowly squatting down and picking up the things that had scattered all over the ground. Perhaps he was scared out of his wits, or perhaps he was like this to begin with. His movements were slow and stiff, making one feel aggrieved. Jiang Yuqing was extremely impatient. Finally, he couldn't help but take a few steps forward and reach for Xiamu's collar. What the hell, Qi? Before his hand touched Xiamu, he suddenly felt a gust of cold wind blowing towards him. Jiang Yuqing knew that something was wrong and immediately wanted to retreat. However, Xiamu, who was originally squatting on the ground, quickly got up at lightning speed. He raised all the things that he had packed up in his arms. The paper fluttered down, instantly blocking Jiang Yuqing's line of sight. At the same time, Xiamu also pounced on Jiang Yuqing. Jiang Yuqing's chin was knocked hard. His teeth collided and he directly bit his tongue until it bled. A wave of intense pain assaulted him. His lips and teeth were instantly filled with the smell of blood. However, Jiang Yuqing couldn't care about that. He directly reached for Xiamu with one hand. This Xiamu, there was indeed something wrong with him. Unexpectedly, although Xiamu's cultivation level wasn't high, his movements were extremely agile. With a tilt of his body he dodged Jiang Yuqing's attack. At the same time, Xiamu directly reached out with one hand and ruthlessly stabbed that pen into Jiang Yuqing's lower abdomen. That pen seemed to contain a great force as it directly sank into his abdomen. Jiang Yuqing's face instantly turned pale. Then his face contorted from pain and anger. You're courting death. He clamped down on Xiamu tightly, gathered force in his palm, and viciously slammed it towards Xiamu. Xiamu suddenly lowered his body, grabbed his arm and fiercely twisted it. Jiang Yuqing felt the pain and subconsciously let go. Xiamu took the opportunity to escape. Bang! The door was knocked open. Eldest young master, what happened? Poof! Xiamu actually directly smashed the window and jumped out. That thin and small figure instantly disappeared in front of everyone's eyes. Jiang Yuqing gritted his teeth and pulled out that pen. Blood and flesh splattered everywhere. His feet swayed and he actually almost fell down. If it were under normal circumstances, this wouldn't be a problem for him at all. However, his body had just been seriously injured during this period of time and he was nervous. In addition, that Xiamu had stabbed him in the right spot, causing him so much pain that he almost fainted. Sun Qi and the others who had barged in were all stunned. What's going on? Xiamu injured eldest young master and escaped? Quick, chase after him. Jiang Yuqing shouted angrily. Digression. At around 3 o'clock p.m. mobile users please browse and read. A more high-quality reading experience comes from AI Network. Chapter 661. Sun Qi looked hesitantly at Jiang Yuqing, who was stained with blood. But eldest young master, you, go. Jiang Yuqing was so angry that his lungs were about to explode. Sun Qi's heart skipped a beat. Yes, he said to the two guards behind him, go after Xia Mu immediately. And you, immediately bring people to lock down the Jiang mansion. No one is allowed to enter or leave. The two guards hurriedly complied and left separately. Sun Qi also jumped out of the window and looked in the direction where Xia Mu left. At the same time he took out a bamboo tube and pulled it hard. Bang! A firework instantly exploded in the sky. This was something that would only be used in an emergency. Sun Qi usually followed Jiang Yuqing and almost never used it. He didn't expect that it would come in handy in the Jiang mansion today. Soon the guards of the Jiang mansion rushed over from all directions. In a short while hundreds of people had gathered and none of them were weak. Sun Qi quickly said, someone sneaked up on eldest young master just now and has fled outside. Everyone follow me immediately to find him. Everyone was shocked. Someone actually dared to sneak up on eldest young master in the Jiang mansion? How much guts did he have? Did he not want to live anymore? That person is thin and small. He's wearing blackish-gray clothes and half an iron mask on his face. His face is severely burned. Once anyone finds this person, you must capture him immediately. Yes. Under Sun Qi's lead, everyone followed out. On the other side, the people waiting in Wutong Garden were also shocked. What was wrong with Xia Mu that he actually wanted to go against eldest young master? Qi Dai was also stunned. Bible. It's impossible. With Xia Mu's courage and strength, it was impossible for him to do such a thing. At this moment, the guards who left had already led a group of people to lock down Wutong Garden. No one was allowed to enter or leave as they pleased. An old man hurried over. When they saw him, the guards took the initiative to make way. Elder Feng. This person was a celestial physician who was specially worshipped in the mansion. He was also eldest young master's trusted aide, Feng Shangyuan. Feng Shangyuan hurriedly entered the room and saw the pale and furious Jiang Yuqing at first glance. His expression changed slightly and he quickly went forward. Eldest young master. How are you? Jiang Yuqing let go of his hand. Feng Shangyuan saw a bloody hole in his lower abdomen, and beside Jiang Yuqing's feet was a bloody writing brush. This must have been caused by that person just now. Feng Shangyuan was shocked. He quickly took out a medicinal pill and fed it to Jiang Yuqing. At the same time he carefully treated his wound. Eldest young master's body has just recovered. I'm afraid that he will have to recuperate for a period of time again. How could that person be so accurate? He actually hit that exact spot. If he had used a little more strength, I'm afraid that his dantian would have been injured. Jiang Yuqing's expression was unsightly. The other party's strength was much lower than his, yet he was still ambushed. On one hand, he wasn't on guard at that time. On the other hand, that person's speed was too fast. After Feng Shangyuan quickly helped him deal with it, Jiang Yuqing took a step forward and was about to chase after him. Young master. You shouldn't move too much right now, so you should rest first. Sun Qi and the others will help you find them. Feng Shangyuan said earnestly. Your body is very weak now. Can't withstand too much torture. Otherwise, Jiang Yuqing's eyes seemed to be burning with two balls of fire. This young master is well aware of his own body. I must catch that Xia Mu today. Today's wound was simply a great humiliation. He took a step forward, then turned around and said sternly to the guards outside the door, Take that Qi Dai away. Watch carefully. Yes. Qi Dai seemed to have a good relationship with that Xia Mu. Who knew if this matter was also related to Qi Dai? Qi Dai couldn't defend himself. He was quickly sealed and taken away. Jiang Yuqing took a deep breath. At this time the medicine had already taken effect. The pain was slightly reduced and the bandaged wound was no longer bleeding. He didn't hesitate to walk out. He wanted to tear that Xia Mu into pieces with his own hands. Eldest young master. Feng Shangyuan still wanted to persuade him. Suddenly, a burning pain came from the wound, causing Jiang Yuqing's vision to turn black. He almost couldn't stand. He immediately stopped, gritted his teeth and looked down at his lower abdomen. That burning sensation quickly disappeared as if it had never appeared. Eldest young master, what's wrong? Feng Shangyuan saw the abnormality and immediately asked. Jiang Yuqing waited for a moment and realized that the feeling didn't appear again. He felt slightly relieved. It was probably the medicine's effect. Nothing, he quickly said and rushed out without caring about being stopped. Although Feng Shangyuan was worried, he knew that Jiang Yuqing wouldn't change his mind once he was determined to do something. Now that he was injured by a nameless pawn, he would probably have to crush his bones and scatter his ashes to dispel the hatred in his heart. Looking at Jiang Yuqing's back view, Feng Shangyuan frowned. Eldest young master's body couldn't take it anymore. On the other side, Sun Qi quickly brought people to find the guard who was sent to chase after Xiamu. Where's Xiamu? Sun Qi looked around and didn't see anyone, so he hurriedly asked. That guard's body trembled as he stammered. I lost him. Lost him? Sun Qi couldn't take it anymore and slapped him. Slap. You can't even do such a small thing well. What's the use of having you? How dare you lose him? Do you not want your life anymore? The guard hurriedly admitted his mistake, but he was helpless in his heart. Lord Sun, that Xiamu's movements are agile. I only saw him jump over that wall and completely disappeared. Sun Qi looked in the direction he pointed and knew that Xiamu had already escaped from the Jiang residence. Wutong Garden was very close to the back door and there were very few guards. It wasn't impossible for that person to escape quickly. Split up and chase after him. Now that the road is covered in snow, I don't believe that he won't leave any traces. Yes. On the other side, Xiamu quickly escaped from the Jiang residence and walked along a small path. Now that the city was covered in snow, his clothes were too conspicuous. With his speed and concealment, it wouldn't be a problem for him to hide for a while, but those people from the Jiang residence would definitely not let him go. Therefore, he had to think of a complete solution. At this moment, the sound of a carriage suddenly came from behind. Xiamu was stunned and looked back. Why would there be a carriage at this time? And there was no one riding the horse. Swoosh swoosh. The sound of something tearing through the air could be heard. Several silhouettes were rapidly approaching this place. He definitely can't run too far. Immediately seal off this place. Search carefully. Even if you have to dig 3 feet into the ground, you have to find him. Yes. Jiang Yuqing. He actually chased after me? Hearing his approaching voice, Xiamu made up his mind and turned around to jump toward the carriage. However, just as he reached in front of it, the curtain was lifted from the inside. An arm reached out and quickly pulled Xiamu in. Dong. Xiamu fell into a warm and broad embrace. Xiamu turned around and jumped up, locking the person's wrist on the wall of the carriage. He pinned the other party down. How dare you? Before he could finish speaking, he suddenly smelled a familiar cold fragrance. The man who was tightly pinned down chuckled softly. Are you in such a hurry? Digression, it's over. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 662. Xiamu raised her head and saw a familiar face. He was noble and devilish with a hint of a smile on his face. He was like peach blossoms blooming in the spring of March, the most ambiguous and moving spring in the world. Rongxiu. He was wearing a white brocade robe and a black cloak. The fine black fox fur wrapped around his jade-like face, making him look like the bright moon in the middle of the night. At this moment he was sitting on the side, tightly pressed down by the person in his arms. One of his hands was on Xiamu's waist, while the other hand was forcefully pressed against the wall of the carriage. Looked like he was the one being bullied. The two of them were so close to each other that they could smell each other's breaths. Inside the carriage, there was a small incense burner decorated with gold and colorful decorations. It burned quietly, making the atmosphere inside the carriage warm and ambiguous. Imperceptibly, the originally spacious carriage became much narrower and narrower. Xiamu's movements suddenly stopped, and a trace of astonishment flashed through her black jade-like eyes. Rongxiu raised his hand and removed half of the iron mask on Xiamu's face. When he saw the ugly and twisted scar, there was no trace of displeasure on his face. Instead, the corners of his lips curled up. It's not done well enough. People will definitely see through it if they see it up close. No wonder you're so flustered. As he spoke, his slender fingers gently touched Shamu's chin, and he easily removed the fake scars. A beautiful face appeared in front of him. If it wasn't Chu Liwei, who else could it be? Rong Xiu's gaze carefully swept across her face. They hadn't seen each other for a few days, but she missed him so much that she almost went crazy. He held her face in his hands and gently brushed his fingers across her soft lips. His eyes darkened slightly. Then he raised his head slightly and leaned against the wall of the carriage. His jawline was smooth and perfect. Below it was a prominent Adam's apple and a jade button that was tightly fastened, glowing faintly. He looked at the woman in front of him who hadn't recovered from her daze with a faint smile. "Do you want to continue?" His voice was low and lazy and the tone at the end rose slightly. It was as if there was a hook easily moving people's hearts. As he spoke, his Adam's apple bobbed up and down, giving off a fatal attraction. Chu Liwei stared at the jade button on his collar and suddenly felt that it was a bit of an eyesore. Wouldn't it be too tight if he wore it like this? Chu Liu's heart suddenly felt like it was being tickled by something that was neither light nor heavy. It felt a little itchy. Monster. She cursed in her heart. Humph. Chu Liu snorted and pretended not to understand what Rong Xiu was saying. Put me down. Continue what? How could he still be in the mood to joke in such an emergency? However, Rong Xiu's hand on her waist did not loosen. With a slight movement of his fingers, Chu Liu's belt was silently undone and slipped off her body. Rong Xiu. Chu Liu gasped and looked at him in surprise. Rong Xiu's movements were extremely fast. He held her waist with one hand and quickly removed the layer of outer clothing on her body with the other. Rip! When the outer clothing fell, it was actually torn apart. Chu Liu was even more puzzled. What was Rong Xiu doing? Rong Xiu quickly put away the layer of black and gray outer clothing, and also quickly undid the red outer clothing that Chu Liu was originally wearing. Chu Liu grabbed his wrist. Just as she was about to say something, a cold and harsh voice suddenly came from outside. Stop. The horses sensed danger and stopped in response. They pawed the ground uneasily, raising snowflakes. Several auras quickly approached. Chu Liu was slightly shocked. It was Jiang Yuqing and his people. Who is inside the carriage? Jiang Yuqing's cold and harsh voice came from outside. Rong Xiu didn't seem to hear at all. He held Chu Liu in his arms and lowered his head to kiss her deeply. He held her slender waist with one hand and quietly removed her hair tie with the other hand. Her black hair fell down. Hearing that there was no movement in the carriage, Jiang Yuqing became more and more impatient. In this world of ice and snow, the road was full of snow. Most people would have already gone home and wouldn't stay outside at all. How could someone travel in a carriage? Furthermore, there was no one driving the carriage. It was only being pulled by 2 horses. There was obviously a problem. The Jiang mansion is investigating the assassin. Anyone who passes through here will be investigated. The person in the carriage had better cooperate. Otherwise, don't blame me for being impolite. The Jiang mansion's guards who came with him had already surrounded the carriage. The cold wind whistled and a strong pressure spread out. The air seemed to be condensed. The person in the carriage still didn't react. Jiang Yuqing's eyes narrowed dangerously. This carriage looked spacious and luxurious, but there was no sign of an aristocratic family. Presumably, it wasn't someone of power. If that was the case, there was nothing to worry about. Besides, even if it was someone with a high status, Jiang Yuqing wouldn't be afraid. If he wanted to investigate someone, who in Xiling City could stop him? Thinking of this, he walked forward with a cold face. With a flick of the knife, he lifted the curtain abruptly. A black streak flashed before his eyes. It was like a huge black feather flying past. Jiang Yuqing frowned and looked inside the carriage. With one look, he was suddenly stunned. There were 2 people in the carriage. A man in a white brocade robe was sitting inside, and he was holding a woman tightly in his arms. The woman was wrapped in a black cloak from top to bottom. Only her head could be seen leaning against the man's chest. From Jiang Yuqing's perspective, he could only see the woman's slightly messy, soft, glossy black hair. Jiang Yuqing only needed to look at the man to know what the situation was. Recalling the flash of black he saw just now, it should be this man who pulled the cloak and wrapped the woman up in a hurry. He didn't expect to run into such a scene. Jiang Yuqing's face was a little dark. On the contrary, after a flash of displeasure from being interrupted flashed across the man's face, his eyes quickly became clear. Although there was still some intoxication between his eyebrows like 3 parts of spring, he obviously understood what was happening. He calmly buttoned up the open collar, and bent down to whisper something softly in the woman's ear. Only then did he raise his head to look at Zhang Yuqing again. Jiang Mansion? Then you must be eldest young Master Jiang? Zhang Yuqing looked the man up and down suspiciously. Even if he was a man, he had to admit that the man in white in front of him had a noble and perfect appearance, and a cold and noble temperament. He was really like a banished immortal. He himself was one of the top few young masters in Xiling City, and even had the title of Xiling's most handsome man for many years. But in front of this man in white he was instantly inferior. If he had seen such a person before, he would definitely have an impression. In other words, this man in white was very likely not from Xiling. Thinking of this, he immediately became vigilant and asked coldly, "Who are you?" Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 663. The man in white smiled faintly. I'm Rong Xiao. Jiang Yuqing quickly went through his mind, but found that he didn't know this name, nor had he heard of it before. I should get off the carriage and greet young Master Jiang, but I'm afraid that's not possible in this situation. I hope young Master Jiang can forgive me. Rong Xiao's voice was low with a hint of laziness. It was an apology, but when it came out of his mouth, there was a sense of laziness and leisure. It was as if he didn't take Jiang Yuqing seriously at all. Jiang Yuqing suppressed his anger. You know me, but I've never seen you before. Rong Xiao's thin lips curled into a smile. Rong Xiao is just an ordinary person. It's normal that young Master Jiang hasn't seen me before. Jiang Yuqing looked at the woman tightly hugged in his arms. Who's the person in your arms? Raise your head. Rong Xiao raised his sword-like eyebrows slightly, hugged the woman even tighter and said with a faint smile, I heard that young Master Jiang is tracking down the assassin. It's understandable that you want to find someone. But the two of us have been in this carriage all this time. We really have nothing to do with the so-called assassin. We'll know whether it's related or not after investigating. Jiang Yuqing rudely interrupted Rong Xiao's words, his eyes still fixed on the woman. Raise your head. It's snowing heavily. These two people should have just stayed at home. Why did they have to travel outside in a carriage? He became more and more suspicious, and even the way he looked at the woman was a little fierce. The smile on Rong Xiao's face faded. Just as he was about to speak, the woman in his arms suddenly grabbed the lapel of his chest, moved her head and spoke. Rong Xiao, since young Master Jiang is looking for the assassin, he naturally can't miss one. It's okay to just take a look. Hearing this somewhat familiar voice, Jiang Yuqing frowned. This seemed to be. Just as this thought flashed through his mind, he saw the woman in Rong Xiao's arms raise her head and look over. A beautiful face appeared before his eyes. It was Chu Luiyue. At this moment her entire body was tightly wrapped in the black cloak, revealing only her snow-white little face. Her cheeks were stained with 2 traces of crimson, and her eyes were like limpid autumn waters, rippling with light as if they could suck in a person's soul. Her cherry lips were bright red, moist and full, like a rose that was about to bloom. The flowing light in her eyes was like a faintly discernible silk thread, lingering with sorrow. The icy snow that filled the sky instantly lost its luster, leaving behind only this unparalleled beauty. Jiang Yuqing stared blankly at the woman in front of him. Of course he recognized this face, but it also seemed very unfamiliar. In his impression, Chu Luiyue was extremely beautiful, but there was always a sense of alienation and coldness about her, making people feel uneasy to get close to her. But at this moment she was obediently leaning in a man's arms, like a soft cat, making people's hearts soften. She was really lively and fragrant. Chu Luiyue looked at him. I didn't show up just now because I didn't want to meet young Master Jiang in such a situation. But since young Master Jiang is looking for the assassin, I can only do this. I hope young Master Jiang won't take offense. After saying this, she smiled slightly as if she was a little shy but full of sweetness. Jiang Yuqing didn't know what to feel in his heart and his mind was blank. He asked almost subconsciously, Who is he to you? Rong Xiao tightened his cloak even more, and the smooth fur collar almost covered half of Chu Liyue's small face. He said with a faint smile, "I'm your fiancé." Jiang Yuqing was stunned. The main reason why Mu Qinghe went to country Yaochen back then wasn't to find the Daijing Yuan meridian. The main reason why he brought Tu Liyue back was to deal with the Wanjing competition. Therefore he didn't say too much about Tu Liyue to Jiang Yuqing. As for her having a fiancé, he didn't even mention it. Jiang Yuqing naturally didn't know. But at that moment, Chu Liyue's smile instantly overlapped with a certain scene in his memory. That person had also revealed such a smile. Even though there was a little shyness, there was more joy and joy. It was as if all the light had gathered in her eyes, bright and brilliant. Jiang Yuqing's heart felt like it was being squeezed by something. The two scenes kept intertwining, almost causing him to be in a mess. For some reason, his hand that was holding the saber trembled slightly. Rong Xiu watched coldly from the sidelines. He sneered in his heart, but his face was indifferent. "Eldest young Master Jiang, since we've confirmed that there's no problem, can we leave?" Jiang Yuqing suddenly came back to his senses. He looked at Rong Xiu and his gaze gradually turned cold. He was also a man, so he naturally saw through Rong Xiu's thoughts. That completely possessive attitude was really disgusting. When he thought of the situation between the two of them in the carriage, his heart suddenly burned with an unknown fire. He didn't know where this anger was coming from, but it felt as if it was going to burn his internal organs to ashes. "It's snowing heavily. What are the two of you doing here?" Jiang Yuqing suppressed the emotions in his heart and asked coldly. Rong Xiu's lips curled into a doting smile as he explained unhurriedly, "Princess Yu was summoned by the third princess. Was summoned to the palace by third princess today. Later on, seeing that it was snowing heavily, I hired a carriage to pick her up. Speaking of this carriage, I have to thank Vice Admiral Mu. If it weren't for him, it might not have been easy to find such a good carriage quickly." Just two short sentences, but they contained too much information. Chu Liyue widened his eyes slightly and glanced at him. Rong Xiu actually asked Mu Qinghe to help find this carriage? When did the two of them meet? How did Mu Qinghe agree to help? Jiang Yuqing was also shocked. He looked at Chu Liyue. "Did the third princess summon you to the palace today? Why did she look for you?" Chu Liyue nodded and said, "It was just a casual conversation. It was just a casual chat. Later, third princess was busy looking after His Majesty, so I came back." Looking at Chu Liyue's expression, it seemed that nothing had happened. However, Jiang Yuqing still felt uneasy. Shengguanwan was too sudden. The two of them talked so much today, but she didn't mention this matter at all. Also, Mu Qinghe asked him to investigate the residence on 6 Cloud Street. How did it suddenly have anything to do with Rong Xiu? Help. But no matter what, Rong Xiu's words were reasonable. Moreover, whether it was Chu Liyue entering the palace or Mu Qinghe helping, it couldn't be faked. It was almost impossible to pick out anything strange or wrong with these two explanations. Jiang Yuqing's suspicions gradually disappeared and he finally took a step back. "Alright, it's all a misunderstanding. Since it has been clarified, you can leave." As he spoke, he waved his hand and the guards behind him immediately stepped aside. The horse seemed to have a mind of its own as it raised its hooves and walked forward. However, just as it moved, Jiang Yuqing suddenly thought of something and quickly stepped forward to stop the carriage. He stared at the two of them closely, full of scrutiny and oppression, and asked in a deep voice, "No, the third princess went to the Jiang mansion early. Chu Liyue should have left the palace long ago. Why are you still on the road after spending so much time?" Chu Liyue's hand slightly tightened. Then he heard the man beside him chuckle and say with a faint smile, "This time, it's not too long, is it? Is it too long in eldest young Master Zhang's opinion? Digression, Rong Xiu, murderous and heartless. I'm worried that these 2 chapters are sensitive and blocked, so I'll post them first. The rest of the update will continue. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from AI Network. Chapter 664. Chu Liyue swore with her life that Jiang Yuqing's face darkened for a moment. She silently glanced at Rong Xiu. What a ruthless sentence. What a vicious man. She liked it. Without waiting for Jiang Yuqing to get angry, Rong Xiu continued. When you are with your beloved, even if you are talking about the most boring things in the world, it is also the most interesting thing. Naturally you will forget the time. He reached out and slowly combed Chu Liyue's hair. I haven't seen you, for a long time and I miss her very much. I'm afraid that it's not enough for me to see her. How can I be in the mood to look at the time? His voice was low and gentle, and his deep eyes looked at Chu Liyue as if he was looking at the most precious treasure in the world. Chu Liyue's heart seemed to be hit by something soft, and it overflowed with sourness and sweetness. She leaned into Rong Xiu's arms and obediently put her cheek on his chest, feeling at ease. With this man around, he would naturally help her solve all her problems. She didn't need to worry about anything. She just needed to watch and listen well. Jiang Yuqing clenched his fists. Because of the force, his knuckles turned white and the veins on his forehead bulged. Rong Xiu's words didn't leave any room for rebuttal. And the scene of the two of them snuggling together was inexplicably dazzling. Let's go. He took a deep breath and turned to leave quickly. Many guards immediately chased after him. Soon the group of figures disappeared from the street. The surroundings finally quieted down, and the oppressive aura completely dissipated. The curtain was put down, covering everything outside. Chu Liyue closed her eyes and slowly exhaled. Almost. If Rong Xiu hadn't appeared in time, it would have been difficult for her to escape unscathed today. Jiang Yuqing was a vengeful person. She hurt him, so he would definitely pursue it to the end. In the following days the West Hill would probably be lively. Dao you know fear? Rong Xiu raised his eyebrows. You were bold when you did it. Chu Liyue was teased by him, but she didn't think much of it. Instead she asked with interest, did you really come out today to pick me up? Or, did you deliberately come here to wait? Rong Xiu didn't deny it and smiled. Strictly speaking, it was indeed both. Initially he was rather worried when he heard that Shang Guanwan had summoned Chu Liyue to the palace. Since Mu Qinghe was there, he asked him to help. Of course, it wasn't that he couldn't find a good carriage. It was just that he didn't like Mu Qinghe. In the end he didn't manage to fetch Chu Liyue. Finally he found out that she was in the Jiang residence. So he drove the carriage here. This was right, was Xiu was Yuqing, Rong Xiu. Was. Even if Jiang Yuqing had doubts, there was nothing he could do if he couldn't find any flaws. Chu Liyue glanced at his expression and guessed something. She couldn't help but sigh. Rong Xiu, why are you always there when I need you? Not once, not twice. Every time. Every time she thought she was in trouble and had nowhere to run, he would always appear and pull her back from the edge of danger into his arms. How could there be such a person in this world? He knew what she knew, liked what she liked, and hated what she hated. He would always give her the best. Was it really God's mercy in this life? Rong Xiu kissed her gently between her eyebrows. I promised you, so I will do it. Chu Liyue played with the jade button on his collar with one hand and murmured in a daze, I don't remember you saying that. The jade button was so tight, but Rong Xiu opened it with his fingers just now. Rong Xiu looked at her deeply. There seemed to be countless undercurrents surging in his eyes, but they finally returned to calmness. He restrained the look in his eyes, leaned close to her ear and whispered, actually, this thing needs to be done carefully. Do you want me to teach you? Chu Liyue looked up and glared at him with her bright and watery eyes. I know how to do it even if you don't teach me. Who are you looking down on? Her long hair was scattered and she was wrapped in a black cloak like a silkworm. She was angry and her cheeks were flushed. She was extremely cute. Rong Xiu laughed out loud. Okay, then I'll let you practice for free. How about it? The carriage started moving again. The carriage swayed and Chu Liyue's hand slipped slightly. It was not easy for her to untie it halfway, but it went back. Chu Liyue wrinkled her nose and used all her strength indignantly. Rip! Chu Liyue stared blankly at the jade button that fell in her hand and the collar that had been forcefully torn open. She was speechless. This doesn't seem to be a good idea. Rong Xiu leaned against the wall of the carriage and smiled lazily. It seems that you're really anxious. Chu Liyue innocently raised the jade button and smiled embarrassedly. That, you misunderstood. Actually, I think the quality of your clothes is not good enough. Rong Xiu seemed to have seen through everything and moved closer to her. The two of them looked at each other and breathed. It's snowing heavily today. I'm afraid you won't be able to return to the Chongshu Pavilion. There's still half a day and one night left. You can do whatever you want. Chu Liyue, it's really a misunderstanding. In the heavy snow, the carriage gradually moved further and further away. The street regained its calm. Other than the 2 ruts in the snow, nothing seemed to have happened. However, on the other side, Jiang Yuqing's heart was burning with a ball of fire. The scene that he saw just now kept replaying in his mind. That woman's delicate and shy appearance was an expression that would only appear when facing her sweetheart. She was originally very beautiful. Jiang Yuqing had long known. He was somewhat similar to that person. Jiang Yuqing also knew. Other than the first time they met, when he saw that bright and brilliant smile that shocked him for a long time, he had basically gotten used to seeing that face after that. The 2 of them were as different as clouds and mud, and there was no comparison at all. Especially that glance outside the zither room in Thousand View Garden. He had already completely separated the 2 of them in his heart. He thought that the throbbing in the depths of his heart had completely dissipated. But when he saw her again today, he realized that it wasn't like that. Chu Liwei seemed to have a strange and subtle temperament that always made him involuntarily want to take another look. She was similar to that person but also different. Relatively speaking, although Chu Liu's background wasn't as noble, and her temperament and self-cultivation couldn't be compared to that person's, she had a more vigorous vitality. That was the tenacity in her bones. Those who hadn't experienced hardship wouldn't have such a feeling. In other words, that person was like the sun in the clouds that he could only look up to. Even if he had a marriage agreement with her, he always felt that there was something between them. Sometimes he even felt that he couldn't even reach the corner of her clothes. But Chu Liwei was different. She was similarly lively and beautiful but also within his reach. What made Jiang Yuqing feel at a loss and faintly flustered was that Chu Liwei. He seemed to be unable to resist. Eldest young master. Digression, Jiang Yuqing. That's a woman within my reach. Rong Xiu. No, that's the road to the underworld that's within your reach. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 665. Jiang Yuqing came back to his senses. The guard beside him looked at him worriedly. Eldest young master, are you all right? Ever since the carriage left just now, eldest young master had been absent-minded and silent all the way. It really looked a little strange. Could it be that eldest young master's injuries were too serious? Jiang Yuqing's face seemed to be covered with a layer of frost. What can happen to this young master? Continue to search. Yes. Jiang Yuqing raised his head. It was still snowing and the entire Xiling city was covered with a thick layer of snow. If the snow was getting heavier, it would be more convenient for Xiaomu to escape. He lifted his foot and quickly moved forward. Jiang Yuqing spent a lot of manpower and resources. He almost turned half of Xiling city upside down, but he still couldn't find Xiaomu. He couldn't even find a trace of him. This person seemed to have disappeared into thin air. When night fell, Jiang Yuqing returned to the mansion. However, he sent a group of people outside to search. In the study, Feng Shunyuan treated Jiang Yuqing's wounds again and checked his pulse. His face was solemn. Eldest young master, your body was seriously injured some time ago and you used a special method to hide your aura. The damage to your body is too great. In addition to today's injuries, if you don't rest well, I'm afraid that you will suffer from a chronic illness in the future. Jiang Yuqing closed his eyes. His body was injured and he had been running around outside for a day. His face looked a little pale. The gloomy mood in his heart was still hovering and couldn't dissipate. It made him frown. Seeing him like this, Feng Shunyuan couldn't help but sigh. This old man is not an alarmist. Eldest young master, this old man knows your body best. You really can't torture yourself anymore. If it affects your future cultivation, then the gains won't make up for the losses. These words finally made Jiang Yuqing open his eyes. Is that serious? Feng Shunyuan nodded seriously. So, during this period of time, don't worry too much. If there's anything, try to leave it to the subordinates. Have a good rest. Jiang Yuqing waved his hand irritably. Easy for you to say. Shangguan Wan was about to start making arrangements for that matter. And even the wedding would be put on the agenda soon after. Where would he find the time to rest? Feng Shunyuan was about to persuade him again when he heard Jiang Yuqing say, "You can go back first. I want to be alone for a while." Feng Shunyuan sighed in his heart. He could only turn around and leave. When he reached the door, he bumped into Sun Qi, who had just returned in a hurry. Sun Qi bowed to Feng Shunyuan and then quickly walked in. Feng Shunyuan looked back, shook his head and left. In the room, Sun Qi walked up to Jiang Yuqing with snow on his head. "Young master, I've already gone to Xia Mu's residence, but I couldn't find him. Furthermore, from the testimonies of the people around him, he had never returned at all." This answer was within Jiang Yuqing's expectations. After doing such a thing, how could Xiamu not know that he would die if he went back? "Did you find out if there's anything unusual about him recently?" "Not at all. Xiamu had no parents and his face was disfigured. He had become mute and had been living alone. Qi Dai lived very close to him and the two of them had a deep relationship. Other than that, the two of them didn't have much contact with others. For the past year or so they had been like ordinary people. There was nothing wrong with them." Jiang Yuqing pondered for a moment and asked, "What about the remaining half of the people today?" "They've all been locked up in Wutong Garden. Someone is guarding them. Brother Qi is locked up alone." As Sun Qi spoke, he glanced at him and asked tentatively, "Young master, what do you think should we do with these people?" "Just lock them up first. Get Qi Dai here first. I'll interrogate him personally." Sun Qi was a little worried. "But young master, you were injured today and ran around outside. Why don't we interrogate him tomorrow?" Jiang Yuqing looked at him coldly. "If you have the time to be long-winded, why don't you go and find Xiamu?" Sun Qi didn't dare to say anything else and agreed. At the same time, 6 Cloud Street, Chu Mansion. The former coachman Yan Qing, who had been driven back by his master early, was looking at the snow in boredom and sighing. "Sigh. Master's thoughts are getting more and more unpredictable now. He even wants me to drive the carriage myself. I don't know if he has picked up Miss Lu Yu." A silhouette quietly descended from the side of the wall and quickly walked towards them. Yan Qing took a look and retracted his gaze. Yumo was shocked to see him. He stared at him and asked, "Why are you here?" He looked around. "Master doesn't seem to be here. Why is Yan Qing here alone? Where's Master? You didn't follow him?" Yan Qing glanced at him coldly. "Master has his reasons for doing what he wants to do. Why do you care so much?" Umo chuckled. "I'm just worried that you have nothing to do." Yan Qing sneered and said disdainfully, "You have something to do?" Umo leaned over and lowered his voice. Then he said mysteriously and proudly, "That's right. I beat up that 4th Miss Jiang again." Yan Qing was a little surprised. "Hasn't she been staying in the Jiang mansion recently? Don't tell me you went in." "No. He came out today. I happened to see her. Isn't it a coincidence? Since I've met her, of course I have to show her." Jiang Yuji hadn't gone out during this period. Yumo waited for 2 days. Seeing that she was obedient, he gave up. He didn't expect that he would have an unexpected gain when he went out today. She was destined to have this tribulation. "I can't help it." As Umo spoke, he moved his fist and felt a little regretful. "Tisk, it's a pity that she brought someone with her this time. I didn't have enough fun." The corner of Yan Qing's mouth twitched. "Do you really plan to beat her every time you see her? It's not like you didn't see what Master did last time. This is considered good." "That's true. She brought this upon herself. Isn't she so presumptuous because she has a backer? She's talking as if our Miss Lu Yu doesn't have one. It's just hitting a stone with an egg. If I don't teach her a lesson, she will definitely do it again in the future." Yan Qing agreed. Suddenly, the sound of a carriage came from outside the courtyard. Yan Qing hurriedly rushed over and quickly opened the door. Umo followed closely behind. A carriage was parked in front of the door. A slender hand lifted the curtain. Rong Xiu got out of the carriage. "Master." However, she saw Rong Xiu lightly nod his head and bring someone down from the carriage. "Greetings, Miss Lu Yu." Yan Qing and Umo shouted in unison. Chu Luyue was a little surprised. "Umo, you're here too?" Rong Xiu had been in West Hill for a while. Usually Yan Qing followed him, but she didn't see Umo much. She thought that he didn't come. Umo scratched his head awkwardly. He couldn't say that he didn't show up previously because his face was bruised and swollen. He coughed and changed the topic. "Master, Miss Liu, it's cold outside. Let's go in." Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 666. After a day of torment in Chuliwe, he could finally return to his home and have a good rest. However, the Jiang residence on the other side was not so peaceful. After being detained for a day, Qi Dai was escorted to Jiang Yuqing's study at night. The cold wind was bone-chilling and it seemed to freeze his bones. Even his heart was almost completely cold. The door was closed from behind. In front of him was Jiang Yuqing, who was sitting behind the table with a cold and dignified expression. The dim yellow light shone on his face and it was cold and eerie. Qi Dai shivered all over. For a moment his entire body stiffened and he could not move. Bang! Sun Qi kicked him in the knee from behind. "Why aren't you kneeling when you see eldest young master?" Qi Dai knelt on the ground with a plop in pain. The pain in his knee made his face pale. He finally reacted and hurriedly kowtowed. "Spare me, eldest young master. Spare me, eldest young master." Jiang Yuqing looked at him expressionlessly. "Tell me what's going on with Xiamu?" Qi Dai paused and felt bitter in his heart. "Eldest young master, I really don't know. Xiamu is introverted and very timid. He doesn't even go out often. I don't know why he did this." Although he also had a lot of resentment towards Jiang Yuqing in his heart, he would at most complain a little in private. He would never dare to do anything. They knew very well what kind of person Jiang Yuqing was. It wasn't like they hadn't seen his methods before. How could they dare to go against him? But Xiamu actually injured Jiang Yuqing. Even he was shocked for a long time when he heard that. Until now he still couldn't understand why Xiamu did this. "You have the best relationship with him. Don't you know what he wants to do?" Qi Dai wanted to cry but had no tears. I really don't know. Eldest young master, please understand. Everything was fine when I came here with Xiamu today." Jiang Yuqing pondered for a moment. Xiamu must have attacked him on the spur of the moment. Otherwise he wouldn't have used just one brush. However, when Xiamu attacked he was extremely steady, accurate and ruthless. Jiang Yuqing even suspected that Xiamu had long held a grudge against him, which was why he suddenly used so much strength. "Has he ever told you that he harbors hatred for me?" Qi Dai pondered for a moment, his expression conflicted. Jiang Yuqing raised his tone slightly with a hint of coercion. Qi Dai hurriedly lowered his head and pressed his forehead against the ground. No, I really didn't." He followed this young master to the southern border. His face was ruined and he became a mute. "Do you really not have any complaints?" Jiang Yuqing didn't believe it. He knew in his heart how these people viewed him, but he didn't mind. In any case they couldn't do anything. But now Xiamu had injured him. Of course he would pursue the matter to the end. Qi Dai had no choice but to say, "This? He has always been loyal to the eldest young master. He wouldn't do this to you." Jiang Yuqing gave Sun Qi a look. Sun Qi immediately stepped forward and slapped Qi Dai hard. "Slap. Tell the truth. If you lie, I'll cut off your tongue." Qi Dai lost 2 teeth and his mouth was full of blood. He opened his mouth, but something seemed to be stuck in his throat and he couldn't speak. Xiamu had saved his life. He couldn't. Jiang Yuqing narrowed his eyes. How could he not see through Qi Dai's thoughts? Such stubbornness was obviously to protect Xiamu. He suddenly asked, "Since you don't admit it, then I won't pursue this matter. Let me ask you, Xiamu, why did his cultivation suddenly regress to the peak of the 4th stage?" Qi Dai was suddenly stunned. He raised his head and looked at Jiang Yuqing in a daze. "Peak of the 4th stage? Impossible, he's still in the same realm as before?" Although his body was seriously injured after returning and he couldn't advance no matter how hard he cultivated, he definitely didn't return to the peak of the 4th stage. A white light suddenly flashed in Jiang Yuqing's mind. He immediately stood up and stared at Qi Dai. "Is what you said true? Are you sure that he's not at the peak of the 4th stage?" Qi Dai didn't know why he was like this and only nodded blankly. "Eldest young master, is there something wrong?" Jiang Yuqing's expression changed quickly. So that's how it is. That Xiamu was a fake. During this period of time, did you notice anything different about Xiamu?" he asked anxiously. Qi Dai thought for a long time and shook his head hesitantly. He's always been like that." Jiang Yuqing instantly thought of the appearance of that Xiamu. He was thin and small, his face was full of scars and he wore half an iron mask. Most importantly, he was mute. Such a person was extremely easy to disguise. Even if he silently changed into another person, who would be able to see the change when he stood there silently with his head lowered? Jiang Yuqing gradually clenched his fists. What he could confirm now was that the Xiamu who injured him today wasn't the real Xiamu. As for the real Xiamu, he had probably been dealt with long ago. Unfortunately, he couldn't confirm when this person was changed, and he didn't know who would pretend to be Xiamu and deliberately sneak into the Jiang residence. As long as that person removed his disguise and changed into his own appearance, who would know? Given the current situation, it was as difficult as ascending to the heavens to investigate this matter. Jiang Yuqing paced back and forth in the room in extreme frustration. As he walked, he kept looking at the brush on the table. Who could have such strength and movement skills? Suddenly he stopped in his tracks. Peak of the 4th stage. Wasn't Chu Luiwei the one? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 667. A burst of burning pain suddenly came from his lower abdomen. Jiang Yuqing frowned and his face instantly turned pale. Sun Qi immediately stepped forward and asked nervously, "Eldest young master, what's wrong?" Jiang Yuqing waved his hand. "Nothing. Take him down first." "Yes." Qide was confused. He had already said what he needed to say. Why was the eldest young master still unwilling to let him go? He really didn't do anything to let the eldest young master down. Sun Qi walked to Qide's side and glanced at Jiang Yuqing hesitantly. "Eldest young master, then." Jiang Yuqing gave him a look and was a little impatient. "Follow the plan." Sun Qi immediately agreed. A trace of uneasiness emerged in Qide's heart. Follow the plan. What plan? His intuition told him that bang. Sun Qi's hand directly chopped Qide until his 2 eyes rolled back and he fainted. Then he personally dragged Qide out. After the door was closed, Jiang Yuqing was the only one left in the room. He took a deep breath and walked towards the bed behind the screen. After taking off his clothes, he carefully examined the wound on his lower abdomen. The burning pain just now only appeared for a moment and then dissipated. A brush was stabbed straight in, causing a small wound. Plus, Feng Shangyuan had already treated it for him, so it was already getting better. But that strange burning pain really made Jiang Yuqing worried. He sat cross-legged, circulated his force and carefully checked the situation in his body, but didn't find any problems. After thinking about it, he asked someone to invite Feng Shangyuan over. After hearing his description, Feng Shangyuan was also full of surprise. But after repeatedly checking Jiang Yuqing's pulse 3 times, he still didn't find anything wrong. This eldest young master doesn't seem to have any other problems apart from these injuries. "What's the pain you mentioned?" Jiang Yuqing frowned. "It's like a fire, but it's fleeting. I checked myself and there's no problem, but this pain is really strange." He was cautious and suspicious by nature, not to mention that this matter involved his body. It was impossible for him not to care. Feng Shangyuan looked ashamed. "It's probably because my medical skills aren't good enough. Why don't I find someone else to take a look at eldest young master?" "No." Jiang Yuqing shook his head. Feng Shangyuan was a little puzzled. "Why? Mingxi and the other lords are still reliable, and they probably won't reveal your body's condition." Those 3 heavenly doctors were Shangguan Wan and Jiang Yuqing's confidants. If not, they wouldn't have been specially chosen to take care of the emperor. Jiang Yuqing didn't say anything, but his cold and solemn expression made Feng Shangyuan's heart race. Could it be that eldest young master no longer trusted those people? Now is a critical time. I can't reveal anything about my body's condition. Thus, even for the few of them, it was best for them to not know what to do. What of Jiang of those words of his? Feng Shangyuan did not ask further. "Then I'll go back and look through the medical books to see if I can find anything." Jiang Yuqing nodded. After Feng Shangyuan left, Jiang Yuqing got up, walked to the table and looked at the pen carefully. The blood stains on it had already dried. Other than the first time, he couldn't see any traces. Jiang Yuqing looked at the table with one hand and fell into deep thought. Did this matter have anything to do with Chu Luiwei? In Xiling City, there were many martial artists at the peak of the 4th stage, but he couldn't think of anyone who had such guts and acted so accurately and ruthlessly. But Chu Luiyue and Rong Xiu had alibis. Moreover, it was impossible for the people in the palace and Mu Qinghe to lie. It seemed that he could only slowly find an opportunity to probe, Jiang Yuqing thought with a frown. If it was really Chu Luiyue, then where did the hatred she had for him come from? Knock knock. Just as Jiang Yuqing was puzzled, there was suddenly a series of hurried knocks on the door. Jiang Yuqing's expression turned cold. It was already so late, why was there still someone here? Before he could speak, a woman's sobbing voice came from outside the door. Big brother, open the door. It was Jiang Yuji. Jiang Yuqing suppressed the anger in his heart and walked over to open the door. Jiang Yuji was actually wearing a veil that covered most of her face. What are you doing? Jiang Yuqing asked with a frown. Jiang Yuji's eyes were red, but Uncle Fu, who was following behind her, immediately knelt down. Eldest young master, please forgive me. It's all my fault. Jiang Yuqing's heart sank. He pulled her directly into the room and pulled off the veil on her face. Her face was bruised and swollen again. Jiang Yuji cried. Big brother, when I went out today I was beaten up by that person again. Jiang Yuqing's temples were throbbing. There were too many things to complain about, and for a moment he didn't know what to say. He took a deep breath and suppressed the anger in his heart with great difficulty. He looked at Uncle Fu. What's going on? On such a cold day, Uncle Fu was sweating profusely. He said nervously, Eldest young master, this old servant accompanied Fourth Miss out today, but when we were settling the bill, Fourth Miss disappeared. When this old servant found her again, Fourth Miss was already like this. This old servant has failed in his duty. Please punish me, eldest young master. Actually, Uncle Fu was also very wronged. He had been carefully accompanying Jiang Yuji the whole day. Who knew that in such a short time, the other party would actually make a move? Jiang Yuqing had already experienced countless troublesome things in this day, but he didn't expect that they still wouldn't stop in the middle of the night. The aura around him was cold and sinister. What's the use of punishing her now? The key is to find that person. This time, did you see what that person looked like? Jiang Yuji shook her head with tears in her eyes. Uncle Fu said, Eldest young master, since that person was able to quietly take Fourth Miss away from this old servant, his strength must be above this old servant's. Jiang Yuqing's heart trembled slightly. Although Uncle Fu wasn't a top expert, he wasn't weak either. It would be easy for the other party to send a powerhouse of this level to take Jiang Yuji's life. But the other party didn't do so. This was clearly to torture Jiang Yuji. Thinking of this, he glanced at her and saw that Jiang Yuji looked aggrieved and there was deep fear in her eyes. Big brother. I won't go out in the future. Can you quickly find that person? Last time Jiang Yuji was still extremely arrogant. Now that she had suffered, she instantly became obedient. Jiang Yuqing's heart ached and he was angry. In the end, he could only say, go back and recuperate first. Don't go out during this period of time. I will send someone to investigate this matter. Jiang Yuji didn't have any objections and agreed miserably. Jiang Yuqing didn't sleep well that night. He had nightmares. That faintly discernible burning sensation always reminded him of a big fire. And this time in his sleep he became the person in the fire. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. It was actually quite normal for someone to assassinate him now. However, on the same day, another important piece of news came from the palace. In the imperial court, the third princess discussed with all the officials and decided to marry Jiang Yuqing on the 6th of June. Calculating the time, it was about 3 months later. It was like a clap of thunder. Everyone knew that the day of the wedding was the day when third Princess Shangguan ascended the throne. Chu Estate. In the room, Chu Luiyue sat cross-legged, holding his breath and concentrating. The origin power of heaven and earth in the surroundings flowed into her body endlessly, passing through her limbs and bones before finally converging into the water droplet in her dantian. The 4 lines were bright and clear on the surface of the water droplet. Chu Luiyue faintly felt as if he had touched an invisible barrier. She knew very well that it was the threshold of a rank 5 warrior. After the battle at the Square Stream sect meeting, The power in her body had become much more solid. Thinking about it, it was time to choose to break through now. Chu Liwei placed both hands on her knees and sped up the flow of origin power in her body. Above her head, an energy vortex quickly appeared. Waves of origin power quickly flowed in. The aura and pressure around her also began to rise at a speed visible to the naked eye. Outside the door, Xiao walked along the corridor. Before he reached, he seemed to have sensed something and looked at the room. A faint ripple could be felt coming from it. His eyes moved slightly and he stood still on the spot. With a wave of his sleeve, a silver barrier quickly enveloped the entire room. Master. When Yanqing arrived, he had just shouted when he saw his master standing in the corridor with his hands behind his back as if waiting for something. He immediately shut up tactfully and looked at the room where Tu Liwei was. When he saw the silver barrier, he thought for a moment and understood. Master is protecting Miss Lu Yu? Could it be that Miss Lu Yu is going to break through again? Yanqing sighed in his heart. Miss Lu Yu's breakthrough speed was too fast. In less than a year, she went from a good-for-nothing to the peak of rank 4 and was about to break through to rank 5. Even if it was a cultivator with the same Daijing Yuan Meridian talent, it would be very difficult to achieve this step. Moreover, she was a triple cultivator. Apart from martial artist cultivation, the ranks of Xian Master and Celestial Physician were also constantly increasing. Even if she was placed in their place, she would not lose to others. Sensing Yanqing's arrival, Xiao turned his head and looked over. What's the matter? Yanqing stepped forward and bowed. Master 36 Revered Elder Ming is back. He's waiting in the front hall. Xiao raised his eyebrows. So fast. At that time, 36 Revered Elder Ming had come to Xiling with him. However, after arriving, he asked 36 Revered Elder Ming to help investigate a matter. 36 Revered Elder Ming was unwilling at first. He wanted to see Chu Liwei before leaving. In the end, he was persuaded by Xiao. According to Xiao's previous estimation, 36 Revered Elder Ming would only return in half a month. He didn't expect it to be so fast. He turned around and glanced at the silver barrier, but he didn't move. Yanqing hesitated for a moment and asked, Master, aren't you going now? Xiao was calm. Wait a little longer. Wait for what? Of course, he was waiting for Chu Liwei to break through. Yanqing was very puzzled. It was naturally a good thing that Miss Lu Yu had broken through to rank 5. However, why did Master still want to guard her personally? At this level, there shouldn't be any problems. It should be over soon. However, he didn't dare to say this out loud. He could only say, then I'll go back and report to 36 Revered Elders first. Xiao nodded. However, just as Yanqing turned around and was about to leave, he saw a figure walking over from not far away. It was 36 Revered Elder Ming. His footsteps seemed slow, but in the blink of an eye he arrived in front of him silently. Yanqing immediately bowed, but 36 Revered Elder Ming waved his hand. No need, no need. I'm here to see the little princess consort. As he spoke, he looked curiously at Chu Liu's room and asked in surprise. Is she going to break through? Xiao, didn't you say that she's still a rank 4 warrior? Why are you guarding her now? For convenience, he disguised himself as an elder of Mingyue Tianshan this time. Therefore, he no longer addressed Xiao as Your Highness, and called him by his name. Xiao seemed to have expected that he couldn't wait to come, and a smile appeared on his face. Naturally, it's because I need it. Buzz. A wave suddenly spread out from the room. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 669. The silver barrier was hit and it rippled slightly. 36 Respected Elder Ming was a little surprised. Is she about to break through to become a rank 5 martial artist? Xiao nodded. 36 Respected Elder Ming looked at the surging heaven and earth force and was even more surprised. This movement doesn't seem like it. Rank 5 martial artist. When a cultivator broke through this threshold, it wouldn't cause too much of a commotion. Not to mention them, even the normal cultivators in Xiling City wouldn't pay much attention to it and were all used to it. Xiao raised his eyebrows slightly. If her breakthrough was really the same as normal people, why would he do this? 36 respected Elder Ming's heart skipped a beat when he saw Rong Xiu's expression. Buzz. Another movement came. This time it was even more obvious than the previous one. The heaven and earth force started to surge in at an even faster speed. 36 respected Elder Ming watched for a while and became interested. It seemed like this girl was unusual. He also wanted to see how capable the woman who could make Rong Xiu so worried about her was. In the room, Chu Liyue's shoulders drooped slightly. She placed her hands on her knees with her palms facing up. The energy vortex above her head became bigger and bigger, and its spinning speed became faster and faster. Vaguely, Chu Liyue could even hear the sound of surging tides. That was the sound of abundant heaven and earth force surging into her body. Waves of vigorous heaven and earth force swam in her body and kept washing her yuan meridian before finally pouring into the water droplet. However, even with so much heaven and earth force surging in, the water droplet didn't move for a long time. The invisible barrier was within reach, but when Chu Liyue tried to break through, she realized that the energy required to take this step was much greater than expected. Whoosh, whoosh, heaven and earth force surged inside and outside her body, and even her eardrums seemed to be gurgling. Suddenly, a cluster of bright red flames emerged from her left palm. That flame danced excitedly like a spirit and then started to attract even more heaven and earth force toward her. Chu Liyue's body was like a bottomless pit, crazily devouring the energy of heaven and earth. The scarlet flames refined the energy, and the origin power carried a scorching aura as it poured into his dantian. Half of Chu Liyue's body began to heat up. Shortly after, a strand of origin power floated out from the water droplet. Like smoke, it slowly spread to her internal organs. Chu Liyue's eyebrows twitched slightly. A colorless flame quickly appeared on his right hand. It was the karmic fire in the heavenly square cauldron. At this moment, it was burning quietly and had also begun to compete for the origin power of heaven and earth. He quickly refined it and poured it into Chu Liyue's body. Unlike the origin power that had been tempered by the scarlet flames earlier, the origin power that surged out of the transparent karmic fire actually carried a trace of coldness. Like a stream of icy cold snow, it gradually spread, causing the other half of her body to become cold. However, this cold qi was very different from the cold qi inside Chang Wanzhou's body. Because this kind of cold qi was extremely pure and unadulterated. Very quickly, a strand of origin power with coldness also surged out of the water droplet and similarly spread to her internal organs. Chu Liyue sat there quietly, but there were two extremely different types of energy mixing together in her body. Ice and fire had always been on opposite sides, but Chu Liyue's body was like a huge and incomparably magical container that fused all of these together. Half of her body was burning. Half of her body was icy cold. Within Chu Liyue's body, the two types of burning and chilling feelings were constantly intertwined. And during this process, the origin power consumed by the devouring was extremely terrifying. Outside the door, 36 respected Elder Ming and Yan Qing looked at the energy vortex in the courtyard with a shocked expression. That was formed because Chu Liyue had absorbed too much of the origin power of heaven and earth. Until now, the energy that Chu Liyue had absorbed was already sufficient for two peak rank 4 to break through to rank 5. However, she had no intention of stopping. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Ripples of energy spread out. The silver enchantment that Rong Xiu had set up was constantly rippling. If it wasn't for his enchantment, the courtyard would have been swept away by the energy contained in the ripples. 36 respected Elder Ming glanced at Rong Xiu faintly. You guessed it long ago? Rong Xiu smiled but didn't say a word. The commotion caused by this girl breaking through to a rank 5 warrior is really not small. If this continues, she will almost be comparable to a rank 6 warrior. There were a total of 9 ranks for a cultivator and rank 3 was a threshold. For a cultivator to break through the barrier of rank 3, 6 and 9 was extremely important to their entire cultivation career. Tuliwe this, boom. A roar suddenly came from the room. 36 respected Elder Ming immediately looked over and widened his eyes in shock. She's going to connect the 5 internal organs. The 5 internal organs referred to the heart, liver, spleen, lungs and kidneys. The so-called connecting the 5 internal organs meant that after a cultivator reached a certain level, They could use the dantian as the center to connect the 5 internal organs and use the origin power of heaven and earth to connect them to the dantian. In this way, the 5 internal organs that were connected to the dantian were equivalent to a pill of origin in another sense. The more the 5 internal organs were connected, the faster the cultivator's cultivation speed would increase. But in fact, connecting the 5 internal organs had extremely high requirements for the cultivator. Ordinary cultivators would only attempt this when they were breaking through to a rank 6 warrior. They might not succeed. According to the difference in talent and physique, the number of the 5 internal organs was also different. Some could connect a few at once while some could only connect one. Many cultivators didn't connect all the internal organs even after becoming a rank 7 warrior. But Chu Luiyue was just about to break through to a rank 5 warrior, so how could she connect the 5 internal organs? Digression. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 670. Generally speaking, the better one's talent, the earlier one could unlock the 5 treasures, and the higher the chance of success on the first try. But other than Rong Xiu, 36 respected Elder Ming had never seen anyone try this when they broke through to become a stage 5 warrior. This could only prove that Chu Liyue's ability far exceeded her realm. Rong Xiu looked back and looked at the room that was constantly emitting waves. His gaze was deep. Actually, he didn't expect it at first, but when he brought her back yesterday, he was surprised to find the vigorous force in her body. Once she started to break through, it was very likely to cause a huge commotion. The result was indeed so. 36 respected Elder Ming was shocked and didn't say anything for a while. And that silver barrier was shaking even more violently. Chu Luiyue had actually expected this scene before she broke through. But when she sensed that the 2 forces of ice and fire were starting to spread toward her internal organs, she was still shocked. In her previous life, she had the Tianjing Yuan Meridian, and indeed she had already started to unlock the 5 treasures when she broke through to rank 5. But now her body had the Daijing Yuan Meridian, and logically speaking she should be like other cultivators starting from the time of rank 6. A thought flashed across Chu Liyue's mind quickly. Perhaps this was related to the water droplet in her body? But this thought only flashed past her mind. She was only stunned for a moment before she quickly gathered her focus and continued to devour the heaven and earth force around her. Chu Luiyue closed her eyes and looked inside. In her dantian, the water droplet was spinning slowly. Streams of origin power gushed out from within and spread to his internal organs in an attempt to connect with them. The surroundings were like endless darkness, and she didn't know when she would be able to find the exit. But Chu Luiyue was extremely patient and she tried bit by bit. After an unknown period of time, a starlight suddenly appeared in the water droplet. Almost at the same time, a subtle feeling of connection was produced. Her heart was unlocked. Thump thump, thump thump. Her heart was beating vigorously, and even the starlight in the water droplet started to shine. The speed of the force circulation in Chu Liyue's body instantly increased by 2 times. The flames in her hands burned even more fiercely. TSK, she actually did it? Sensing that unusual fluctuation, 36 respected Elder Ming finally could not hold back and spoke out. As a revered elder, he was unquestionably a top-notch cultivator. He had seen tens of thousands of cultivation geniuses. On the surface, 36 respected old Ming was all smiles, but in reality he was an extremely picky person. It was easy to imagine how high the standards of such a person were. At this moment even he couldn't help but glance at Rong Xiu. No wonder. Brat, your eyesight is quite sharp. Didn't Chu Luiyue come from an ordinary family? Didn't they say that she was a good-for-nothing when it came to cultivation? What was going on now? As far as he knew, Rong Xiu had been eyeing the girl ever since she started cultivating. Back then he had thought that since it was rare for Rong Xiu to fall in love with a girl, even if her background and talent were slightly inferior, it wouldn't matter. Who would have thought that after all this time, this brat had brought along a true genius? To think that he had thought so much before. It was simply a waste of emotions. Rong Xiu raised his eyebrows and his lips curled into a smile. Thank you for the compliment. Between his brows, there was a proud look that was not concealed at all. 36 Respected Elder Ming, how shameless. Boom. A series of explosions could be heard. She's still continuing? 36 Respected Elder Ming was shocked and hurriedly looked over. Could it be that she can still open the second treasury? In the room, Chu Liyue's eyes were tightly shut. After the first success, the subsequent process became much simpler. Very quickly, the second starlight appeared in the water droplet. This time it was the liver. After opening 2 treasures in succession, the force in Chu Liyue's body was still surging crazily, and there was no sign of it stopping. Chu Liyue made up her mind and decided to directly open all 5 treasures in one go. Her entire person seemed to have entered some kind of wonderful state, and she completely forgot about the flow of time in the outside world. She only continued to absorb the energy from the outside world, and then converted it into her own force. Again and again she tried to continue opening the remaining 5 treasures. The water droplet rotated slowly and the force that surged out also increased. Finally there was a soft sound. Spleen. The third starlight flashed slowly. 36 Respected Elder Ming's expression gradually became serious. Such talent was really hard to come by. Generally speaking, it was actually very difficult for a cultivator who tried to open the 5 treasures for the first time to succeed. There were really very few who could open all 3 treasures in one go. And this, to a certain extent, also foretold the cultivator's potential. If Chu Liyue could still continue, boom. As if to confirm his thoughts, there was another boom in the room. A wave that contained powerful energy spread out in all directions. The barrier shook even more violently. This was already the 4th treasury. 36 Respected Elder Ming, who originally didn't care about this matter, already had his entire heart in his mouth at this moment. Even Yan Qing's face, which had always been as cold as ice, was now filled with deep shock. Only Rong Xiu had one hand behind his back and his posture was calm and lazy. It was as if he had already predicted the result. After opening all 4 treasures, 4 starlights shone brightly in the water droplet in her dantian. At this moment, Chu Liyue's speed of absorbing the force had already reached 4 times the initial speed. Fortunately, her yuan meridian was wide and tough enough. Otherwise, it would really be hard for her to withstand such a turbulent force. Waves of force washed through her body. Chu Liyue could clearly feel that the aura on her body was continuously strengthening. Although her eyes were closed, her 5 senses were obviously much sharper than before. Chu Liyue held her breath, and a flash of passion flashed across her heart. If she could open the last treasury, it would be extremely beneficial to her cultivation in the future. So no matter what, she must succeed. The last treasury was undoubtedly the most crucial and also the most difficult checkpoint. Among 1,000 rank 6 martial artists, there might not even be one who could open all 5 treasures. The difficulty was imaginable. Chu Liyue tried again and again. The first time didn't work, the second time. The second time didn't work, the third time. After an unknown period of time, there was still no movement from the 5th treasury. The force in Chu Liyue's body was constantly depleting. But she still didn't stop and she still tried her best every time. She was incomparably stubborn and tenacious. It's been so long, the 5th treasury shouldn't be able to open anymore. Looking at the sky, 36 Respected Elder Ming muttered to himself. Actually, it's already very outstanding to be able to open the 4th treasury on the first try. It's fine if you really can't open the 5th treasury. Rong Xiu didn't move at all, as if he was still waiting. After a while his eyes moved slightly. Boom. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 671. The last treasure was successfully unlocked. The 5th star finally appeared in the water droplet. Almost at the same time, Chu Liyue heard the sound of something shattering. Bang. That was the barrier of a rank 5 warrior finally breaking. As though the floodgates had been opened, a flood poured down. The wind howled and countless waves were swept up. Chu Liyue retracted her hands and the 2 balls of flames quickly returned to her body. A powerful aura spread out from Chu Liyue's body. The 5th pattern gradually appeared on the water droplet. Buzz. Chu Liyue suddenly opened her eyes. There seemed to be 2 balls of flames burning in her eyes. It was extremely bright and brilliant. A true rank 5 warrior. She stretched out her hand and drew a line of origin power. 5 stars were faintly discernible in her palm. Even that force was wrapped in an unusually powerful aura. This level of strength was more than a few times stronger than before. This was the strength of a rank 5 warrior who had unlocked all 5 treasures. Even someone as calm and collected as Chu Luiyue couldn't help but feel agitated at this moment. She had never thought that not only could she be reborn as a human, but she could also cultivate to such a level again. Although there was no way to be compared to her previous self, Chu Luiyue could clearly feel that as her strength increased, she was indeed getting closer to her previous self step by step. There would be a day when she would return to her peak. She would take back everything that belonged to her. When the fluctuations around her gradually dissipated, Chu Luiyue took a deep breath and calmed herself down. She stood up and walked outside. The door opened and a few gazes looked over. Chu Luiyue followed the gaze and looked over. The first to see was Rongxiu. Standing behind him was Yan Qing. Beside him was a green-robed old man with white hair who was looking at her with a smile. This is... Chu Luiyue was puzzled. Rongxiu waved his sleeves and the silver barrier disappeared silently. Only then did Chu Luiyue realize that he seemed to have set up a barrier outside the room. Is he protecting me? Well, she had caused quite a commotion just now and it would be troublesome if she attracted someone. She had been in the limelight in West Hill recently and there were many pairs of eyes looking at her. Although she wasn't afraid, she knew that it was easier to dodge an open spear than an arrow in the dark. It was always better to be careful. Moreover, she had unlocked all 5 treasures as a rank 5 warrior. If this news were to spread, it would probably cause a bloodbath. Thinking of this, a smile appeared on her face. Just as she was about to walk forward, she saw that the old man had already taken a step forward. "Vo Wang. Little Lu Yu, right?" Although the old man's face was full of wrinkles, his eyes were very clear and he looked hale and hearty. When he walked over, it seemed like he hadn't moved at all, but in the next moment he was already right before Zhou Xian. Moreover, there was not the slightest bit of power. Chu Liyue's heart tingled. This old man's strength was probably far beyond her expectations. At this moment he was looking at Chu Liyue with a smile and a curious and eager face. Chu Liyue glanced at Rongxiu and saw that he was smiling. It was obvious that he had a good relationship with this old man, so she smiled obediently and bowed. "Lu Yu greets Senior." 36 respected Elder Ming looked at the little girl in front of him happily. Her face was porcelain white and her eyes were clean. There was a hint of nobility in her eyes. She was really likable. Not bad, not bad. Rongxiu's taste was indeed good. He liked her the moment he saw her. "You don't have to be so polite. This old man's title in Mingyue Tianshan is 36 Ming. You can call me 36 respected elder." So he was an elder from Mingyue Tianshan. Chu Luiyue understood and immediately responded obediently. 36 respected elder came to West Hill this time because he has something important to do. He also came here to take a look. Rongxiu walked over and explained. Chu Luiyue nodded and said apologetically, 36 respected elder came from afar. 36th elder, you've come from afar. Please forgive me for not being able to receive you properly. Oh no. This old man knows that you were cultivating just now. This old man has always been free to come and go. I don't care about these formalities. Besides, Rongxiu is here. It's more important for you to break through. As he spoke, a trace of admiration appeared in his eyes. Little Lu Yu, your talent is really outstanding. It seemed like he already knew about what had happened just now. Chu Liyue's mind raced. It was hard not to know that an expert of this level was standing here. Moreover, Rongxiu seemed to have a good relationship with this old man and should be very trusting. In that case, she had nothing to hide. Thank you for your praise, 36 respected elder. Actually, Lu Yu was just a little lucky. 36 respected elder Ming chuckled. There are people in this world who can't do this even if they use up their lifetime of luck. Little Lu Yu, you don't have to be humble. It's Rongxiu's fortune to be able to find you. Rongxiu raised his eyebrows slightly. It seems like someone has suddenly changed sides. Chu Liyue's face turned slightly hot. This was the first time she had heard such words from an outsider. It felt really strange. 36 respected elder Ming no longer had Rongxiu in his eyes. He only had Chu Liyue left. He had never married in his life and had no children. In the past he had always treated Zhou Xian as his close relative. Not only did he teach him everything but he also often gave advice to Zhou Xian. It could be said that without him, there wouldn't be Zhou Xian who sat firmly on the position of Holy Son today. But there was one thing. He had great expectations for Zhou Xian and was relatively strict. But when he saw Chu Luiyue, his heart instantly melted. Such a cute and beautiful little girl, isn't she meant to be pampered? Little Luyu, you're now a rank 5 warrior and have opened your 5 treasures. It's time for you to build a good cultivation foundation and stabilize your advancement. I happen to have some Earth stage martial skills, why don't you pick them? With that, 36 respected Elder Ming shook his hand. Crash. Many jade boxes instantly fell out of the universe ring. Those jade boxes were all lustrous and translucent with a faint aura. It was obvious that the items inside were not ordinary. He coughed. Old man, things are a bit messy. You can put up with it and pick whatever you like. If you don't like it, I still have more. Chu Liuyue's eyes were dazed for a moment. What does this mean? There's actually someone in this world who casually gives an Earth stage martial skill on their first meeting? However, seeing Chu Liuyue's expression, 36 respected Elder Ming misunderstood and thought that she didn't like them. He pondered for a moment, pulled Chu Liuyue's wrist and walked to the side. He lowered his voice and whispered, Little Luyu, if you don't like these, then I actually have better things. However, those are all the sect's inheritances. I'm afraid I can only give them to you after you and Zhou Xian get married. Chu Liu's brows twitched violently. Does he mean marry Zhou Xian and give her a heaven stage martial skill? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 672. Zhou Xian, who felt as if he had been sold, was speechless. Facing the extremely enthusiastic 36 respected Elder Ming, Chu Luiyue was unable to withstand it. She coughed and said, Thank you, 36th Elder Ming. I appreciate your kind intentions, but this gift is really too precious. Choose one. Choose one. 36 revered Elder Ming urged. How can this little thing be considered valuable? I'll give you something better in the future. Chu Liuyue was speechless. Little thing, was he talking about these Earth rank martial skills? Were all the top-notch experts now so generous? Chu Liuyue still wanted to decline, but Zhou Xian had already walked forward. His gaze swept across the boxes and he picked one and handed it to Chu Liuyue. This is 36 Elder Ming's kind intentions. Just accept it. Otherwise, according to his character, he might really pester Chu Liuyue for half a month because of this matter. Chu Liuyue hesitated for a moment and could only accept the jade box. Thank you, 36 Elder Ming. 36 respected Elder Ming's eyes lit up when he saw the box. He looked at Zhou Xian and chuckled. You sure know how to pick. This old man wants to give something to little Luyu and you didn't forget to interfere? Chu Liuyue looked at the two of them in confusion. Zhou Xian smiled faintly. Just in passing. As he spoke, he also took out another identical box from his universe ring and handed it to Chu Liuyue. 36 Elder Ming gave you the first volume and this is the second volume. Chu Liuyue was somewhat puzzled. Why was there a need to divide a martial skill into 2 volumes? Suddenly she widened her eyes slightly. Wait a minute, if the first volume was an Earth rank martial skill, then wouldn't the second volume be a Heaven rank martial skill? Zhou Xian, this second volume. Zhou Xian seemed to have seen through her guess and his lips curled up slightly. You are this prince's fiancé. 36 revered Elder Ming is temporarily unable to give you this item, but this prince can. As expected, Chu Liuyue immediately confirmed his guess. With the first and second volumes added together, it was definitely a heaven-tier martial skill. And what did Zhou Xian just say? Just in passing? 36 revered Elder Ming said sourly. You only know how to bully me. When you get married, this old man will give you whatever I want. How could it be your turn? Chu Liuyue was speechless. Is this something to be proud of? The vast majority of cultivators in this world might not even be able to see a heaven-ranked martial skill in their entire lives, but they had actually given it away so casually, and she had just broken through to become a rank 5 warrior, yet she had received such a precious gift out of the blue? Chu Liuyue looked at Zhou Xian meaningfully. She was now extremely sure that the Honorable Prince Li, oh no, His Highness Saint was indeed from a wealthy family. Hugging two heavy boxes in her arms, Chu Liwei silently thought to herself, so this is the feeling of hugging someone's thigh. Awesome. Oh, that's right. I heard from Rongxiu that you, little Lu Yu, are also a Xian master and celestial physician? Although this old man doesn't cultivate these two, I have collected quite a number of things. As 36 revered Elder Ming spoke, he poured out another pile of things and started picking. This is a level 8 Xian formation, this is for you. And this is for you too. This seems to be a prescription book. Back then this old man picked it up from a 9. Celestial physician, take it. Chu Liwei, who was still pretending to be calm at the beginning, finally felt her eyelids twitch violently. Isn't this too extravagant? 36 revered Elder Ming, these things of yours are really too valuable. However, Rongxiu had already taken those things and placed them in her arms, not allowing her to reject. 36 revered Elder does indeed have quite a number of things that are idle. It's a waste to leave them with him. You're just making the best use of them by accepting them. Just take them, Rongxiu said casually. As he spoke, he glanced at those things a few times as if he was picking something. 36 revered Elder Ming, I remember that you have a yuan instrument that can teleport? Oh, yes. That's good too. 36 revered Elder Ming searched again. After a while he took out a palm-sized bronze disc and stuffed it into Chu Liu's hands. Little Lu Yu, you've just reached the standard of flying. This is the most suitable thing for you to use. Chu Liu was dumbfounded. At the beginning she tried to dissuade them, but after realizing that she couldn't stop these two people at all, she decisively gave up. How should she put it? This feeling of being thrown money at, it still felt good. 36 respected Elder Ming only stopped when Chu Liu's entire body was about to be buried by these gifts after half a day of digging. He sized up Chu Liwei and shook his head regretfully. I'm still lacking. Rongxiu, you have to hurry up and get married. Otherwise I can't give you a lot of things. Only when Chu Liwei became Rongxiu's princess consort and reached this level of relationship could he continue. Rongxiu's lips curled up slightly. I'll try my best. Chu Liwei was speechless. What does this mean? Why does it feel like something isn't right? After Rongxiu finished speaking, he glanced at her and smiled. Keep these first. There's something that you probably don't know yet. Let's go inside and talk. Faced with such a forceful gift, Chu Liwei felt weak, pitiful and helpless. She could only obediently put everything into her universe ring. Although the universe ring wasn't heavy, for some reason, Chu Liwei felt that if she shook it, she would hear countless money rustling. Come to think of it, although I didn't have anything when I was reborn, my luck seems to be ridiculously good. After packing up, the few of them finally entered the house. Chu Liwei personally brewed tea and received another round of praise from 36 revered Elder Ming. Little Lu Yu, the tea you brewed is really good. Chu Liwei asked curiously. Do you like Jin Junmei? 36 revered Elder Ming was stunned for a moment before he immediately nodded. Rongxiu sat at the side and watched this scene with a faint smile. Who didn't know that 36 revered Elder Ming only drank the ice and snow water that he carried with him? Especially at his level, he didn't care about these things. Although his acting skills were clumsy, he was sincere. Chu Liwei could roughly tell what was going on and she found it funny and warm. She could tell that he really liked her and valued her. All of this was because he cared about Rongxiu. Although she had never heard Rongxiu mention it before, this old man was extremely important to Rongxiu. There's a piece of news from the palace today. Rongxiu took a sip of tea, and the fragrance instantly spread between his lips and teeth. The wedding between the third princess and young Master Jiang is set for the 6th of June. Chu Liwei was stunned. This is... Shangguan finally can't hold it in anymore. Is she going to ascend the throne? While she was in a daze, she realized that Rongxiu was looking at her with a deep gaze. Chu Liu's heart skipped a beat. He seems to care a lot about my reaction? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 673. Actually, this matter was within her expectations. She was even a little surprised that the two of them had only decided on a date now. After all, the two of them had seemed so affectionate on the night of her death. She had thought that after her death, the two of them would be in power and could find a random reason to quickly get married. The two of them were irreconcilable enemies to her. Apart from that, sisters, fiancé and fiancée, those had long disappeared. Therefore, when she heard this news, she was not surprised at all. She even wanted to laugh. Two people whose bodies were severely injured, getting married at this time was simply asking for a snub. 6th of June. Calculating the time, there were only about 3 months left. Actually, this was not a long time. Apart from the wedding, there would definitely be a coronation ceremony. There were many things that would take a lot of time and energy to prepare. She just did not know why the two of them chose this time. Besides, even if they really got married, not to mention Jiang Yuqing Shangguanwan, how could a piece of trash with a damaged yuan meridian pick up the Tianling scepter? It was fine if she used special methods on normal days, but on the day of the wedding, if she could not pick up the Tianling scepter in front of all the officials, the scene would definitely be beautiful. Thinking of this, Chu Liyue was actually a little excited. TSK. Her bad habit of being a busybody was getting worse. Seeing Chu Liyue's expression change and a sly smile in the end, Rong Xiu's eyes flashed and his smile deepened. He leaned back in his chair lazily. It seemed that some of his worries were indeed unnecessary. Pretty good. Chu Liyue smiled. The emperor of the Tianling dynasty has been in a coma for 2 years and has been without a leader. Now it is time to solve this problem. However, whether it can really be solved is another matter. Since Shangguanwan dared to do this, she must be prepared. As expected, she heard Rong Xiu continue. Also, there's one more thing. The third princess said that the emperor had been in a coma for a long time, and they needed to find several special herbs and the blood of divine beasts to wake him up. For this reason, she planned to personally head to the Great Desolate Swamp. Chu Liyue was really surprised this time. Great Desolate Swamp? That place was at the western border of the Tianling dynasty. It was extremely remote and the environment was harsh. Why would Shangguanwan want to go there in person? Back then, Mu Qinghe had joined the Black Cavalry and fought for many years in the Great Desolate Swamp. In the end, she had quelled the rebellion with great difficulty, which was why she had her current status. It was easy to imagine the dangers involved. Chu Liyue had been to the Great Desolate Swamp in his previous life. Although it wasn't as mysterious and dangerous as the southern border, the Great Desolate Swamp was still a dangerous place compared to other places. Mystic Forest, Mirror Lake, Red Moon Desert. Back then, even she had been in danger several times. In Shangguanwan's current situation, she still dared to take such a risk? Chu Liyue thought for a moment. She brought the elders of the royal family with her? There's also 1,000 Black Cavalry. If the rumors aren't wrong, Mu Qinghe will be leading the team. Rong Xiu touched the teacup with a calm expression. In addition, she also plans to send 10 people from each of the 8 sects in the sect competition. He said, to provide opportunities for training. I heard that she will be selecting people from today onwards. We will set off 3 days later. Chu Liyue almost laughed out loud. Provide opportunities for training? Shangguanwan could actually say such things. How dangerous was the Great Desolate Swamp? More or less, there was no return. It was understandable that she brought the elders of the royal family and the Black Cavalry, but she still wanted to select people from the 4 major sects. She obviously had other motives. This is the royal family's matter. Did she say that the 4 major sects agreed so easily? This wasn't what she said. It was Purple Shao Sword sect master Song Wan who suggested it. It seems that some outstanding descendants of aristocratic families can go together if they want to. Now the news has spread throughout the entire West Hill. How preposterous. Ridiculous. Chu Liyue didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Why are they so passionate about the Great Desolate Swamp? Isn't that place very dangerous? It's dangerous, but there might be countless treasures hidden there. People die for wealth and birds die for food. It has been like this since ancient times. Rong Xiu said lightly as if he didn't care. Chu Liyue was speechless for a moment. All along, the Great Desolate Swamp had always been mysterious and dangerous in the eyes of the world, but it was also full of temptation. Because thousands of years ago, a shocking battle had once erupted there. It was rumored that in that battle, countless strong people killed each other and they all fell in the end. The various treasures and inheritances that they left behind had undoubtedly become things that everyone yearned for even in their dreams. Therefore, for many years, there had always been an endless stream of people entering the Great Desolate Swamp. Back then, it was also because someone found an incredible item in the Great Desolate Swamp and gathered a group of extremely vicious people who wanted to start anew in the Great Desolate Swamp. In the end, they were forcefully suppressed. That group of people who rebelled had all disappeared, but it was precisely because of them that countless people realized how powerful the countless treasures hidden in the Great Desolate Swamp were. Therefore, from then on, even more people went there. In addition, there was an even more important point: divine beasts. There hadn't been a divine beast in the Tianling dynasty for hundreds of years. Even the former Shangguan Yu had only contracted a 9th-grade magical beast, not a divine beast. No one knew when it started, but there was suddenly a rumor that a divine beast appeared in the Great Desolate Swamp. In this world where the strong were respected, all these factors had a fatal attraction to all cultivators. Therefore, after Shangguan Wan mentioned this matter, many people immediately expressed their desire to go with her. Chu Liyue thought for a moment. That's true. Rong Xiu looked at her. Then, do you plan to go? Chu Liyue was a disciple of the Chongshu Pavilion, so she naturally had a chance. Moreover, she had just won 3 matches, turned the tide, and preserved the Chongshu Pavilion's position as one of the 4 major sections. She would definitely be the focus of attention. Chu Liyue thought for a moment. Go. Why not? It wasn't like she hadn't been there before. Moreover, she also wanted to see what tricks Shangguan Wan had up her sleeves. Suddenly, she frowned slightly. But, if I go, what about you? Rong Xiu smiled faintly. I'm leaving tomorrow 1 step earlier than you. Chu Liyue was a little surprised, and a sense of loss suddenly surged in her heart. So soon? I've been resting here for a long time and it's time to go. Chu Liyue realized that Rong Xiu had indeed stayed in West Hill for more than a month. It was just that she had been busy with many things, and the two of them didn't have much chance to be alone. Chu Liyue fell silent for a moment. Rong Xiu glanced at Yanqing indifferently. Yanqing immediately understood what he meant. Master, I suddenly remembered that there are still some things I haven't done, so I'll take my leave first. Rong Xiu nodded slightly. Yanqing slipped away. Rong Xiu looked at 36 respected Elderming again. However, 36 respected Elderming was looking at Tu Liyue, and he asked with a worried and eager expression. That, little Liu, the place you mentioned is so dangerous. Do you want me to go with you? Digression. At about 12:30 p.m. mobile phone users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 674. Rong Xiu, 36 respected Elderming, you seem to have said something wrong? This is your first time meeting you, is it appropriate for you to speak like this? As if Rong Xiu's gaze was too cold and resentful, the slow-witted 36 respected Elderming finally realized something and quickly turned his head to look at him. Hey look, Rong Xiu is also very worried. I feel more at ease accompanying you. Rong Xiu. He suddenly rejoiced that he didn't let 36 respected Elderming meet Chu Liyue in the past month. Otherwise, he wouldn't have had a good time during this period of time. Chu Liyue smiled helplessly. 36 respected Elderming, I'm afraid this won't work. Shangguan Wan had caused quite a commotion this time, and it was obvious that she was very strict in selecting people. Each of the 8 sects would send out 10 people. Those who didn't know the inside story would probably think that this was an excellent opportunity and would fight until their heads bled. With such strict control over these sects, people like 36 respected Elderming would definitely not be allowed to go together. Hearing this, 36 respected Elderming's face was filled with disappointment. He originally wanted to follow and protect little Lu Yu. But don't worry, I will be very careful and pay attention to safety. Chu Liyue said again. Sigh, all right. 36 respected Elderming let out a long sigh and began to take things out from his universe ring. If that's the case, then I can't help you with anything else. I can only give you some things to protect yourself. Here, this and this. And this. Take them all. As he spoke, he handed over another pile of things. Chu Liyue, it was really hard to guess how many treasures there were in the big boss's universe ring. I mustn't disappoint 36 respected eldermings' kind intentions. Rong Xiu raised his finger and moved all those things to Chu Liyue's feet. Then he took out another pile and similarly piled them in front of Chu Liyue. I'm giving these to you. Chu Liyue. Why did he inexplicably smell a faint murderous aura? Chu Liyue felt really embarrassed and tried to stop him again and again. Hence he successfully kept all these things into his universe ring. The three of them were happy. Chu Liyue was busy receiving gifts, but he didn't know that Xiling City was already in an uproar because of these two matters. The third princess and young Master Zhang's wedding. To His Majesty, to His Majesties, His Majesties, to the disciples of the major sects were all extremely excited. That was the great desolate swamp. Although there were countless treasures. If he could find some kind of treasure or even obtain the inheritance of a certain expert, that would be a great opportunity. All the cultivators in the world wished to become stronger. Therefore, even if they knew that the great desolate swamp was dangerous, it still couldn't stop them from wanting to go. For this reason, the major sects had already begun to consider candidates. Oh. I'm not going. Jian Fengqi crossed his legs and waved his bone fan. He looked lazy and indifferent. That's a barren land. Whoever wants to go can go. Jian Shai looked at him disapprovingly. What barren land? That's a place where divine beasts have appeared. Let's not talk about whether the rumor is true or not. Even if it's true, do you think I'll have a chance to get that divine beast? Jian Fengqi sneered. If only divine beasts were so easy to tame. Jian Shai also knew that what he said made sense, so he didn't argue with him. Even if you can't find a divine beast, it's good to go and experience it. You grew up in Xiling and almost never went outside. Now that this is a rare opportunity, you can go out and see. Moreover, the third princess is going to look for herbs for His Majesty. You're not interested in divine beasts, but there should be herbs, right? Jian Fengqi glanced at his father. Father, I'm fine in Xiling. Why do you insist on me going out? Even if I didn't experience those things, aren't I still fine now? I'm a celestial physician and you're also a celestial physician. Why are you still forcing me to fight with a group of martial artists and Xian masters? Jian Shai really didn't know what to do with this son of his. He only cared about himself all day long and wanted the best for everything. He wasn't willing to suffer at all. Jian Fengqi glanced at him and continued. Besides, Mu Qinghe used to rise from that place. Is there anyone who knows Dahuang Swamp better than him? It's enough for him to go on this trip. There are so many other people going, but they're just joining in the fun. However, he didn't like it. Sheng Guanwan was there and he was really afraid that she would ruin his mood. Besides, Sheng Guanwan's words were just used to scare people. Only she knew what she really wanted to do. He might as well stay in Xiling and do what he should do. Seeing that he really couldn't persuade him, Jian Shai could only give up. Master, can I go? Mu Hongyu suddenly asked. Jian Shai was stunned and immediately nodded. Of course. Although there were only 10 places, Mu Hongyu had the incorporeal body. In addition, she had improved rapidly during this period. Of course, she could go if she wanted to. Mu Hongyu's eyes lit up. That's great. Thank you, Master. That place sounds very interesting. And if I'm not wrong, Liu will definitely go too. Jian Fengqi frowned slightly and was about to stop her, but he swallowed his words when he saw Mu Hongyu's excited expression. Jian Shai shook his head at Jian Fengqi. Since you don't want to go, then it's up to you. Many disciples on the mountain want to go. Jian Fengqi was unmoved. He stood up, stretched, and walked out leisurely. When he passed by Mu Hongyu, he knocked Mu Hongyu's head with his bone fan and whispered, "You really don't know the difference between life and death." Mu Hongyu blinked and wrinkled her nose. Who was reckless? Just as she was about to retort, Jian Fengqi had already walked away. Imperial Palace, Huayang Hall. Sheng Guanwan sat there thinking about something. Chani was packing her things. They would set off for the Dahuang Swamp in 3 days. This time it would probably take more than a month. Therefore she had to bring a lot of things. The Dahuang Swamp was a dangerous place. If it was in the past, Sheng Guanwan would still have the courage to go. But now, her body, she felt more or less uneasy. Fortunately, she had brought a lot of people this time. Your Highness, Your Highness? Chan Yi called out to her twice before Sheng Guanwan came back to her senses. What's wrong? Chani looked at her expression and asked hesitantly. Is the third princess worried about something? With Vice Admiral Mu leading the team this time, there shouldn't be a problem. Him. Sheng Wanwan scoffed. He won't listen to me. Although she knew that Mu Qinghe was Jiang Yuqing's subordinate, perhaps because he had been by Sheng Guanyu's side for so many years, she couldn't trust him. If it weren't for the fact that they were going to the Dahuang swamp and Mu Qinghe was the most suitable, she wouldn't have brought him along. Your Highness, you're worrying too much. Isn't young Master Jiang accompanying us? If you're really worried, why don't you bring that thing along? Sheng Guanwan turned around. What? Chani bowed and whispered, have you forgotten that that person left behind a set of armor? Digression. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 675. Are you talking about the pure gold armor? Sheng Guanwan furrowed her eyebrows. That item is not bad, but it has always been in Zhao Hall. Everyone in the Tianling dynasty knows that it belongs to Sheng Guanyu. If I take it out, that person has already passed away. It's a waste for the holy item to be left in the pavilion. If it can be used by your Highness and protect your Highness, it will be the best use. Chani didn't seem to mind. She advised, you are already above everyone and you will be getting married in a few months' time. No one is more suitable than you to be the new owner of this pure gold armor. Sheng Guanwan was moved by her words. The origin of this pure gold saint armor had quite a long history. Back then, when Sheng Guanyu had just become of marriageable age, she had led the Black Cavalry to patrol the territory. Along the way, she had accidentally entered the ruins of an ancient battlefield and obtained the pure gold armor. She had only publicly worn it once, and that was during the final battle in Dahuang Swamp. It was rumored that she had worn the pure gold armor and fought against 3 rank 8 martial artists alone. She had even killed all of them in the end. From then on, the pure gold armor had become famous. Sheng Guanyu was the heavenly princess and had seen many good items. However, this pure gold armor was definitely one of the top 3 yuan tools that she had. It was obvious how powerful it was. Sheng Guanwan had naturally been moved by this item. She had even thought of taking the pure gold armor for herself after dealing with Sheng Guanyu. However, her yuan meridian had been burned and hadn't recovered. Thus, she had thrown this matter to the back of her mind. Now that Chani mentioned it, she suddenly recalled it. What you said makes sense. Sheng Guanwan narrowed her eyes and thought about it. Let's go now. Zhao Hall. This used to be the most honorable place in the entire palace, other than the Universal Palace where the current emperor lived. This was because this used to be the residence of the heavenly princess. The bustling of the past had all disappeared. The current Zhao Hall had become very lonely and cold. Other than the palace guards who were sent to guard the palace, almost no one would come here. Because the empress concubine died from qi deviation during cultivation, it wasn't very pleasant to hear. In addition, the one in power now was the third princess, so people rarely talked about the past. In this palace, it was true that each new emperor brought in his own ministers. In the eyes of the world, the third princess and the empress concubine were extremely close and had a very good relationship. However, the palace servants who had been in the palace for a long time all had a keen mind. They more or less understood the subtleties involved. Therefore, when Sheng Guanwan arrived, the palace servants of Zhao Hall were very shocked. Long live the third princess. Sheng Guanwan waved her hand casually and stepped into the courtyard, heading straight for the sleeping quarters. I'm just looking around. Do whatever you need to do. After everyone agreed in unison, they waited for Sheng Guanwan to enter the bedchamber. Then they exchanged glances and slowly dispersed. Ever since Her Highness the Empress concubine left, the third princess came a few times. She always came with red eyes and left with red eyes. He didn't come much this year. Today's visit was really inexplicable. But no matter what, they still had to serve her carefully. Sheng Guanwan walked into the bedchamber. This room clearly hadn't been visited by anyone for a long time. The air was filled with a faint smell of dust that had been sealed for a long time. When the sunlight shone in, one could see the dust dancing in the air. Sheng Guanwan frowned and used a handkerchief to cover her mouth and nose. She was angry and amused at the same time. Who would have thought that the once glorious Zhao Yuhao would fall to such a state one day? If it was a normal day, she would definitely immediately go out and admonish her to show her deep sisterly love. But today she really wasn't in the mood and couldn't be bothered to do it. She walked to the bedside and gently rubbed the edge of the bed. After touching a protrusion, she pressed with her finger and the sandalwood cabinet diagonally opposite quietly moved aside. A secret compartment appeared in front of her. Shang Guanwan walked over and knocked on it a few times. The secret compartment opened. A pure golden armor was placed in the middle of it. Even in this dark space, this pure gold armor still emitted a faint glow that couldn't be ignored. From top to bottom, it emitted an indescribable noble and lofty aura. At a glance, one could almost feel the surging blood qi on the armor. This wasn't the first time Shang Guanwan saw this pure gold armor. But every time she saw it, her heart would be shocked. It was a true sacred object passed down from the ancient times. It was an incomparable existence that could be called a divine artifact. Shang Guanwan was excited and couldn't help but reach out her hand to touch it slowly. It was cold and hard to the touch, but it emitted a powerful pressure. If she really wore it, what would it look like? Shang Guanwan took a deep breath and carefully took off the pure gold armor. She held it in her arms and felt it against her face for a while. This was a powerful aura. This armor recognized its owner. Unfortunately, her yuan meridian was damaged and she could only look at it. When her body recovers, all of these would be hers. Shang Guanwan carefully put the pure gold armor into her universe ring. Then she restored everything to its original state before leaving. Chani was waiting at the door. As Shang Guanwan walked out, she said indifferently, "Long Tianyu hasn't been cleaned up." Eldest sister's palace hasn't been cleaned for a long time. The palace servants of Zhao Yuhao have neglected their duties and have all been chased out of the palace. Chani bowed. Yes. Jiang residence. Eldest young master, you can't go with the third princess this time. If this continues, I'm afraid your body will. Feng Shunyuan came to the study again and tried his best to dissuade him. Jiang Yuqing sat in the chair expressionlessly. You don't have to say this anymore. I must go this time. He wasn't going because of anything else, but because he was worried about Shang Guanwan. Shang Guanwan wanted to recover her yuan meridian as soon as possible and he agreed. However, he didn't expect her to do this the moment she made a move. Not only did she bring the royal family's elders and 1,000 black cavalry, but the other sects also sent 10 disciples each. What was going on? Others didn't know, but he knew best. Shang Guanwan was being too hasty. Feng Shunyuan frowned. But if you and the third princess go to Dahuang Swamp, what will happen to West Hill? Leave it to the subordinates to deal with. Now that most of the problems have been resolved, nothing will happen in a short month. Jiang Yuqing didn't think much of it. For the past 2 years he had been upholding the principle of those who followed him would prosper and those who opposed him would die. He killed those who should be killed and captured those who should be captured. He had already dealt with those who posed a threat to him. He wasn't worried about what the remaining shrimp soldiers and crab generals would do. But there's still His Majesty. It's precisely because I want to find out the problem that I want to leave West Hill. Jiang Yuqing said meaningfully. Feng Shunyuan didn't say anything else. Hidu. Eldest young master Vice Admiral Mu requests an audience. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. You're tuning in to the Zhou Xian's Legacy YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.